Okay, we are recording right now.
I'd like to call to order the Design Review Subcommittee meeting of Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. And I think we have a number of applicants that have not been through this process before, so I'm going to read a little one-paragraph preamble of what the purpose of the subcommittee is to provide direction, insight, concerns, and opinions to the applicant on how the project can best comply with the city's design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee is not an approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission and Zoning Administrator regarding a project's compliance with city design guidelines. Each of the subcommittee members will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based upon city design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee will not design the project for the applicant, nor will the members always agree on the best course of action. The applicant can assess the input and incorporate any changes accordingly with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Decisions to approve, deny, modify a project are made by the Planning Commission, City Council, or the Zoning Administrator with input and recommendations from the subcommittee and city staff. The chair of the subcommittee will lead the discussions. Planning staff will be available to provide technical assistance as necessary. Time is limited. Consequently, the design review subcommittee will focus on site and project design rather than on land use issues, which are the purview of the Planning Commission, City Council, or the Zoning Administrator. Very good. We have a full quorum. Wonderful. Does everybody understand that little preamble?
Yes.
Great. Okay. The first item is approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes from the October 27th meeting. Do we have any changes and or a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
I think he was absent, so I will second the motion. Commissioner McCann?
Aye.
Commissioner Crandall is an aye and one abstention. The second item of business is architectural review of the following items. Item A, discretionary sign permit, 21-245 Casablanca Inn Signs, 1601 North El Camino Real. Jonathan Lightfoot is the staff presenting the project.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, subcommittee. And we do have the applicant with us today, including the property owner, Nick. And Nick, I'm going to let you pronounce your own last name and your colleague.
My name is Nick Coffey-Joblett, and this is Justin from Yesco Sign. Justin.
Great, thanks. So this application is for a discretionary sign permit at an existing hotel in our North Beach area. The property is on North El Camino Real between Calle de los Molinos and Avenida Florencia. And Stephanie has kindly pulled up the first sheet of the plans that show that intersection there, including the hotel. The first section of the staff report just walks through the history of the property. Initially, that right portion of the property with the red tile roofing was a single-story motel that was demolished in 1983 and replaced by a 2 to 3 story building. Later on, that white roofed element, you can see that adjacent parcel became part of the property. It was an office building that was converted with the pool added as well. And so they went through 2 rounds of entitlement review regarding the hotel use, both with the city and with Coastal Commission regarding those approvals. There was a prior sign program that we were able to identify in 1992, and so that's in your packets as attachment 4, and Stephanie will be able to show that on the screen as well. And I think that's a good starting place just to show where we are. This is actually the subsequent approval. So there was a revision to the initial sign program. The initial program included the 2 large wall signs and the pole sign. The subsequent approval through design review, and at that time the design review board was the final approving body for the program. They permitted the addition of Best Western associated signage. So almost every sign on the site just had a companion Best Western sign that was added. There's sign area tabulated to the side there, and that's referenced in your report, that they hit a total sign area of around 272 square feet, I believe was the total. However, since then, there's been a reduction of sign area on site because the Best Western signage is no longer there. So we've lost about 85 square feet of the signage from that one-time high. The reason that this application requires a discretionary sign permit is twofold. One, within our architectural overlay, any accumulation of signage for a business above 25 square feet requires a DSP. So in this case, there's a requested new sign. So anytime there's a new sign that is when we're above the 25 square feet would trigger that requirement. Two, there's a request for neon lighting on the existing pole sign. And that also is always a discretionary sign permit. So both those elements would trigger that requirement. As to the neon, just to clarify too, we often talk about halo illuminated signs within our architectural overlay. Within our A overlay specific guidelines for signs, neon lighting is referenced as permitted with a DSP. There's really not any additional information or guidelines to that, so it's somewhat this board's purview to determine the appropriateness of location or use for when neon lighting is incorporated. That being said, Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind shifting back to attachment 1, which shows the current proposal, and there's a shift back away from the Best Western signage, which had existed at this pole sign, to the Casablanca Inn signage, and that would be neon illuminated, which this evening simulation shows what that is expected to look like. In addition to this neon illumination, on the next page, there was just a reface of existing directional signs, but more significantly, this proposed new sign, which is at the parcel that was converted. So even though that was converted back more than 20 years, or about 20 years ago, there's been no signage at that location. So as a general note, staff is supportive of some signage at this location, given the fact that I've personally driven this many times and had no idea that that parking lot was associated with the property. So I think that there's some value to there being some added signage to indicate, especially given that the primary clientele here are people who are not from the area, who certainly would not have an idea of the specific property, to help them identify where permitted parking for the property is located. However, as outlined in the report, staff does recommend a change to the sign that's used. The code only allows one pole sign per site, and while it was two parcels at one time, it was merged, so it is a single parcel now. So they would not be able to have a second pole sign. So what you see there is not going to be something that we can permit. So my recommendation would be one of two things: either convert this sign in that existing landscape planter to a monument sign. They would need to do some additional review with our engineering division to determine whether or not the footings would encroach into the right-of-way. So that it's possible, but we would need to look at that a little bit closer. Or secondarily, as you can see in this image here to the right, thank you, Stephanie, another option would be a projecting sign. So something that could cantilever off of that corner post of the building to indicate their hotel name. That could be another alternative. There is a requirement that those signs maintain an 8-foot clearance above sidewalk, but there is about a 2-foot gap of landscape planter this side of the building. So a sign could extend. They're also would be allowed to project into our right of way by 2 feet. So there's a couple of allowances of a box that they could work within. I won't discuss that anymore because that's not our responsibility to design, but those are the two types of signs that staff could be supportive of. Again, given that I think that there's value to adding some signage at this location and noting that they have reduced the overall sign area since the last sign program was approved. That really concludes the report that I have to provide today, but of course I'm available for questions, as will the applicant speak.
Would the applicant like to make any comments or suggest or comment also on your thoughts on staff's recommendations?
Well, I appreciate it. I'll say thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for getting us on the agenda today. Appreciate you. We have left Best Western, so we're now just the Casablanca Inn, so hence the need for the new sign. So our current sign still says Best Western Plus. So I think that the design that we came up with is elegant and has a nice white neon. It fits with our new branding, with our mural, which I'm sure you guys have seen. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for
What's,
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, and thank you, Jonathan, also for getting us on the agenda. The current building sign out there is already neon. It's been neon, it was never converted, as the first slide was showing. So by doing this and putting the pole sign back to neon, it's going to make all the signs out there.
and when you say the first sign, which sign, are you talking about the pole sign?
The building sign. So on the first slide, they showed the original signs. I don't know what
Attachment.
Yeah, there you go. So that's actually on the building right there, the top one, and it's still there. That's existing. So by going forward with this project on the pole sign, we're now bringing back that sign to match and make it uniformed out there. So that is one thing I would just like to add to this.
Do you have a photo, Stephanie, of that?
Or could you pull up a Google Maps photo of the building?
Oh, sure.
So a little bit further, I believe, on Calle de los Molinos, and then to your left. To your left,
Yeah,
actually.
you went to
There you
Do
go.
I do-
There you go, right
Okay.
above. Is that the sign you're referring to?
Yeah.
So that's neon, is that reverse channel or is that exposed neon?
It's exposed.
Okay. And that one you're keeping?
That one's there. Yeah.
So that doesn't have the palm trees or is that part of your new logo?
no. So we'll just keep that one for now.
Okay.
So what about staff's making some recommendations about not having the second pole sign and instead making it a monument sign or a projecting sign? You guys have any thoughts about that?
I'm open to that, yeah. I was the one who thought, because I do have a lot of people who come and park there, and I have a lot of customers. I read the Booking.com and Expedia complaints that they didn't know there was the parking in there. They say, well, we're short on parking, and then I'm there, and I'm like, the whole back lot is empty, and they're going, you're underparked, and so it dawned on me. I said, well, they're driving by and not knowing that that's our lot too. And I've got other people who come into the lot from the the business next door, the storage area, the place across the street, the auto shop. Everyone's coming over there to park there, and yeah, my customers, some of them, are not aware that that's our building and for our customers.
Right.
And so,
Okay, Jonathan, is it just a bookkeeping issue, or why aren't we doing a master sign program so it never has to come before this body again?
Yeah, so I do reference a master sign program within the staff report. So one of the recommendations there, typically when it's a single business for a master sign program, we see this often with gas stations, that the DSP essentially is the master sign program where they're kind of setting, this is the total amount of signage we want on the site, that they're not expecting additional tenants to come. However, I did, my second recommendation was to revise plans to include both existing and new signs and tabulate total approved sign area, include any standardized sign parameters for future sign refaces that may be approved administratively under this master sign program. So we wouldn't really be looking at new signage, adding new signs to be approved under the MSB because it's only one business, and I don't know that we would support administratively adding additional signage here. That should just be done at this time. But if in the future if they have any plans of any refaces to be considered administratively, that is something that I included as a recommendation that should be clearly stated on their final plans that go to Planning Commission.
Okay. Any other questions of staff or the applicant?
Yeah, can you go over again? You don't, the code doesn't allow them to have a second pole sign? Is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah. Limit to, it's across the board, only one pole sign per site is permitted.
And the sites have been legally merged?
They have
Good
been,
one, yeah.
correct.
Okay, Steve?
So the one sign that you showed us that they were proposing is a pole sign. how would a monument sign differ from that? I mean, it just has to be one big.
Yeah,
That's about it. Yeah.
correct.
Bigger base.
So and our code has a strong preference for monument signs, to the extent, just as informational purposes. When we have a pole sign, we count as total sign area against the side both sides. A monument sign obviously is also a two-sided sign, but we only count one side. So there's several things within our code to encourage a movement away from pole signs towards monument signs.
Okay, so there's existing landscape, it looks like, and that's where the new sign is proposed.
Correct.
So getting it up above the landscape, it looks like there's just kind of natural grasses or something in that planter. There's going to be an imperative, I think, to be able to see the
Yeah,
sign.
the height of the monument sign, the height is,
So they can go up to 6 feet.
yeah, 6 feet, which should be plenty.
But then what about sight distance issues?
Yeah, so good question. And I reference a couple of those things in the staff report. That's ultimately why my recommendation is to go in the direction of a projecting sign, because we have not yet evaluated a monument sign at this location. Another challenge to meet our code standard is that the face area of that sign, that landscape planner has to have the remaining area of the landscape planner has to be equal to or greater than that sign face, which might be a challenge here. So, especially to your point, to create something big enough that it's visible above the landscaping, they could have an issue with that ratio. So that challenge, the line of sight and the footings have not yet been evaluated by engineering because that's not a part yet of this proposal. So they'd have to take a look at that and whether there could be any safety concerns with the ingress egress from that.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of having the sign over on that side though, because it helps to kind of contain, gives you an edge. If it's on the building, I don't know that it's going to be clear that that's part of the parking.
And it doesn't really illuminate the access, the apron.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be able to see it,
But
but then you're also, is it a blade sign? Does it project so that you can see it as you're approaching? Or is it, face on the building, in which case you've got too much glass, I think, for it to look at on that corner. So, we don't have any options, it sounds like, to elevate it above the landscape and then call it a monument. It has to be,
it has to be called a monument. That's pretty clear in the code.
okay.
There are exceptions to height a little bit that can be made, but
I mean, I'd like for it, I'd like to see something worked out on that side.
Okay.
And that couldn't be attached to the building. And that's the reason, because, it helps to, that's the edge of the property, right? And you're trying to identify the parking over there. So for me, even being a kind of a dumb driver, going by, I maybe wouldn't necessarily understand that there's parking in there, even if there was a sign. So, and there's some things, we're not getting into the architecture, right?
Correct, not for the building.
The awnings, they would kind of compete. I mean, they're,
Those awnings are removed now, actually.
oh, they are.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you have there? You don't have any?
No.
Okay.
I think we've got a photo of that. On the third page. Third page in, it kind of shows it. There's no on. Oh, no, that even shows the awnings. Okay. Well, let's close the question part. Open it to public comment. Any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll close public comment and start discussion then on this. I'm going to jump in first, which is not my usual mode. But having done this 11 years, I haven't seen an exposed neon sign approved in the architectural overlay districts or on El Camino Real. And the code does not, it leaves it up to interpretation. So historically, that's been an interpretation of the people in the body. So everyone here can make their own interpretation on it. But I was mentored by those guys, so I lean towards halo lit. And if you want to use neon behind them, that's fine, but not exposed. But we don't all have to agree. This is just a recommendation to the commission level, so. That's it, and I agree with Steve. I think the location is a good location for the sign, because coming out, turning right, you can certainly have clear view of traffic coming up towards that. And if you're going to go across, you've passed that, and turn left, you've passed that sign by the time you're turning left, and you'll see traffic. So I don't think line of sight would be an issue. And Jonathan, one more time, you said they might have that would be a one-sided sign. So you were saying that the square footage might be an issue as far as, it's just the sign face, not the monument itself, that's counted.
Correct. So what I was saying is that a monument sign, even with signage duplicative on both sides, let's just say Casablanca is on both sides of that sign. For monument signs, we actually only tabulate one side of that sign towards their total sign count.
Right, okay. Any questions, or let's hear discussion from anybody any discussion?
On the dance hall casino was neon. Was that halo backlit?
No, that was, well, yes, no, it was exposed, but that was considered a historic sign on a historic building. And it can fall into a whole different category than these signs. And what we're doing here is making a recommendation to commission of our feelings about it, and this would be the only neon on El Camino that I'm aware of, facing El Camino.
Can I ask the applicant a question?
Sure.
Do you guys have a problem if it's backlit neon versus direct exposed?
When you say backlit neon,
Kind of
It's like a
like
silhouette.
your Best Western letters currently are. How they halo on the back.
like that?
Yes. Yeah.
I prefer this, and it does match our other existing sign, which has been there since the 80s.
Right.
And previously, we had open channel, Best Western. This is a previous Best Western. And we added the simple Best Western above the existing Casablanca sign when we originally joined the franchise. So,
But right now, the only exposed neon is facing the side street, right? That's not facing El Camino.
right.
And I mean, it does have the no vacancy or the vacancy, right, still. And I believe we're cleaning that up, so it looks a little cleaner.
Right, so currently there's that no vacancy
Right.
in red, so we've removed that. And I think the design is really clean. It's white neon, it's not, red or pink or orange or, and it's in a nice black housing.
Okay.
Yeah, and
And it is called the Casablanca, so the white neon, I think it's nice. I give it a young hip, listen, we're trying to take the hotel in a kind of a hip direction to make it more appealing to younger people and kind of freshen it up from the Best Western branding. That's why I brought down the, world-class artists from LA to put that beautiful mural on. And we're going to be doing a lot of things to improve the property, beautify it, and bring it into the next, next decade here.
Awesome, thanks. My personal feeling, I don't have a problem with the exposed neon in that location, but that's up to the body of the planning commission.
What do you think it would do to setting a precedent for anybody else that wants to do neon on El Camino? Since there's nothing that I was trying to find something unique that would make you guys stand.
Well, the
alone
fact that
and
it
be different.
matches the existing, they have existing neon from 1982 on the other side, and we just approved the dance hall thing across the street, that's
Which I think that's a different, in my opinion.
Right. I don't, like I say, I personally don't have a problem with it, but if the majority of the commission does, I don't feel strongly about it. I kind of like the second pole sign, to be honest, as opposed to a monument sign that's going to have more sight distance issues. But it sounds like that's, not the direction of the code, so. But other than that, I'm fine with everything. I think the design is good and all that.
So we can't even sort of elevate the monument. We can't be on like a pedestal base.
Yes, so absolutely it could be on a pedestal base. The definition within the code just says that the base structure for a monument has to be wider than the sign, right? So as long as there's a base, yeah, absolutely, they could elevate it, and then we would not count that area as part of the sign copy area.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with Bart. I mean, we're potentially setting a precedent on it, that it could open the floodgates. I mean, I think that the mural is cool. I mean, I think you guys are you're going in a good direction. What about a monument sign that was, I guess, would it be east-west? If it was perpendicular and on that side, elevated above that landscape, then you get, the sign on both sides. You can count that on both sides. And I actually think if it's a monument, the reverse channel looks good because you get that sort of silhouette that to me is more elegant than just a straight neon.
Yeah.
So, if you guys came in with a beautiful sign, and I think it needs to be simple, that was just exposed neon. I'm not saying we wouldn't go along with it, but I just think conceptually that a monument that's elevated on a pedestal that you can see from both directions with the silhouette, I think would be very elegant. In that location.
Off for this side?
Yeah, on this left side of the site.
I'm pretty open to any type of signage on this side. I am very preferential to the design of the neon for our existing monument sign.
Well, I like everything else.
Okay.
I is that what you're saying, Bart? I mean, I think really it comes down to that one sign.
Yeah, the pole sign.
Yeah, the pole sign, which doesn't, you can't do that, obviously, so you have to come back anyway, right? That would be my...
And for the major pole sign, the way the code's written, it kind of almost an afterthought saying neon. If you read the way the code is written, it says, oh, and yeah, you could consider that if in the past they kind of shied away from that, and
The other option,
they didn't see that as Ollie Hansen's vision.
The other option, just to throw out there to consider, I am not saying I want this, I'm just as an idea. If you dropped that one, the existing one, down to a monument sign, then you have the pole sign on the other side. Just if that somehow made more sense to you.
Wait, what are you saying, Scott?
I'm saying that the existing pole sign, he's only allowed one.
Right.
It's got the big major one on the corner. If you drop that down and made that a monument sign, then you could have a pole sign on the other side. If that somehow made more sense to them.
If that's the direction they chose to go, I'd say, with visibility, that's your primary identification of the building. I mean, right there.
Oh yeah, you wanted about the landscaping.
Plus, that's kind of the middle of the center right there. Seems like you want to keep that one there.
Yeah.
Plus, you're spending their money, telling them
I'm not telling them, I'm giving them an option.
Yeah.
I think everything else looks good.
Okay, Jonathan, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, so we'll connect on the alternate options for that sign, and then this will progress towards planning commission unless there's a specific element that you.
I think it can go.
Okay, so-
This one's pretty straighthtart.
Sounds good.
Simple.
And if I may just add one more thing, I hear your concerns, Commissioner Crandall, about the neon, and I'll just say this, that where we want to take the direction of the hotel, I think there's kind of two ways to think about neon. There's the bad neon, which I might call like old neon that you might find is this tacky, low end, and then there's the type of neon. The reason I like neon is because I see it as part of a fresh idea of neon, where hip hotels are using neon in a way that the hotel is still luxurious. You look at, let's say, like the Roosevelt Hotel on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yep, no.
And that's the kind of direction I want to take the property. We're going to be putting a lot of money into the property to beautify probably all the rooms, the pool, and there's a lot of fun things coming for the property. And the neon with that following behind it, I think it'll sit differently, if that makes sense. Whereas if it was neon, like the neon sign that's currently there from 1982 against a property that's maybe a little run down, it hits differently. Versus when my sister and I come in with fresh blood and money into the property to really bring this property and make it a very special property for the city. That's my intention. And we're going to put a good amount of money back into the property to make it a really special place.
Okay, very good. Yeah,
Thank you, I appreciate it.
unanticipated concern is, should the property ever sell,
Yeah.
a new tenant would have the right to change the type, style, and everything and keep the neon and basically do anything they wanted with the neon on that sign.
I understand your concern.
And there's a risk of, once that starts, we've got to look ahead to future occupants of the building. So
I understand
that's something that was guiding me that direction.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that, if we were able to evaluate it as a total project,
Yeah,
and we could see if you're doing some facade
yeah,
treatments, or if you're, if we could see a whole package, maybe it would fit better.
yeah.
But with what we're looking at here,
Right, I don't have that with me today, but I just thought I would share that with you.
okay,
And we welcome you doing it.
yeah, we'd like to see it.
Very good. Well, thank you
Chair
very much.
Crandall, may I
Yes.
ask just for clarification purposes so that we're conveying accurate information in the minutes. With regard to the neon lighting, would it be accurate to say that two of the subcommittee members suggested a preference for halo backlit lighting, and one subcommittee member supported the proposed neon?
Was open to the neon.
Yep.
Is that accurate? Okay. Any
Absolutely.
other clarification in terms of just?
Thank you, Stephanie. No, that was helpful. I think I'm good.
Can I
Very
add
good.
one thing real quick with the neon? We call it exposed neon, but it is actually in a channel, like that photo shows right there. So it's not like your typical skeleton neon.
Yeah, it's outlined.
It's
Yeah.
actually inside of a channel letter with a clear face on it. So it is contained inside the letter.
Yeah, and that's, if it was just bare neon, there's no way.
Yeah.
Except it's, yeah, I think we understand that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
you.
We'll see you at the commission level.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item 2B, minor architectural permit 21228, 309 commercial facade improvements. Kurt is the presenter today on this one.
Thank you. Members of the subcommittee, as mentioned, the project is located at,
Yeah, and if
Uh,
any of the applicants would
The
like to
applicants
join
can
us
come
at the
forward
table.
if you'd like. This is an informal enough meeting that we can talk face to face.
Great.
You guys got the whole team here, huh?
Yeah.
We don't mess around here. And we saw what the last one went through, so.
We sent through some full-size copies for you guys, just for your reference, if you want to look at it a little closer.
Is that the same as
Is that the
these?
same as this one?
Yeah, whatever. you
It may
prefer.
be just the abbreviated, but
Oh, that's
we weren't
fine.
sure how, I mean, you
have
obviously,
one on the table.
you've got, this is great. Now,
Okay, thank you. As mentioned, the property is located at 309 Calle de los Molinos, and the applicant is proposing a minor architectural permit for changes to the existing building. The project is located at the corner of Calle de los Molinos and Rincon Court, as you can see on this slide. It's an existing industrial building and located within the West Pico Corridor specific plan. It's an I2 industrial designation, it's light industrial designation. This is the building that is out there currently. If the committee members have driven by or seen, as I'm sure, if you make a left coming off Pico on Los Molinos, just when you get past Rainbow Sandals, it's immediately adjacent to the flood control channel out at the site. Again, it's at the corner of Rincon Court and Calle de los Molinos. The applicant is proposing facade improvements to the building with very minor improvements to the site. Their intention was to come in and dress up the building at this time and did not want to address the site yet at this time. They wanted to focus on the building, and the site would be something that would be thought of or come back later. I will go into some of that information later in the report for you. This is just a slide to show you the obvious improvements that the applicant is proposing to the building. The building, as you can tell, existing condition on the right is just an older, I should be careful with that word. It's an older industrial building out at the location. They are proposing to raise and use a gable pitch roof. They are also proposing improvements to that patio cover portion to it, as well as the roll-up doors that are on the site, and on the next slide we'll show you as well. They also identify a water tower element that is there for architectural design, but it also has function that I will not try to get into. I'll let the applicant explain that to you in a little bit more detail if you are interested in that. And at the top of the roof pitch, they have these galvanized roof vents. And that is another comment that I'll get back to as well for the committee. The code does not allow for mechanical equipment to be placed on top of the roof, and no other definition other than in the code it identifies that in order to exceed the height, there needs to be a conditional use permit if it's considered for a cupola or something of that. So again, I'll come back to that for the committee as well. The elevation on the left, the west elevation, is just at the rear of the building. The north at the bottom of the slide is the building and facade improvements that are proposed along and adjacent to the channel. And the south elevation is what faces towards the interior of the site. The applicant is proposing to do clean up and do some minor improvements of the landscaping along Rincon Court as well as Calle de los Molinos. And they are proposing to add tree wells within the parking lot. And the bottom right portion of the slide gives you an illustration of the fence that the applicant is proposing. It's a corrugated metal fence. Out at the site, I should have shown in another slide, it identifies or it shows you a chain link with slats. And so they're proposing this corrugated metal to match to the building as well. The site meets the design standards with the intent. Part of that, which may be a little bit confusing, and I'll go back to that water tower element. This slide probably shows it best. It actually is taller than those roof vents that are shown, but the way that our code reads for calculating roof height and roof height elements, it's the channel side that we have to take on that side that averages out. And that average is about I think it's around 2.5, 3 feet higher than what the code, the specific plan allows. For the vents. It allows 35 feet, and these are about 37.5, 38 feet roughly, if they were considered as cupolas as opposed to vents. And again, the only interpretation I can identify with that is if it functions or if it was considered to be mechanical equipment, which would not be allowed. The water tower, as you can notice, is taller, but that's on the parking lot side, and it is at 31 feet from grade on the parking lot side, so it doesn't even come close to the max height requirements. So that's something that I will ask from the committee for an interpretation on, or if your opinion of. And then the other is that the site does not meet the landscape requirements, which is 10% for the specific plan. They're not improving much or proposing much improvements to the site. They did recognize that they wanted to add some landscaping and clean out what's out there near the along the street frontage and right of way. We do have recommendations to maybe add a little bit more landscaping, specifically to the parking lot portion on the left side, in front of the sidewalk and the wall on the left, and then at the parking and wall or railing of that wall on the right. So those are some of the recommendations that are in the report. One other thing that I wanted to note was on this slide, it gives you a better idea of that wall on the left side as it goes into that bay with the roll-up door. As you're driving down Los Molinos, as I mentioned, just past the flood control channel, that might be a great opportunity to put a mural or something that the code, the policy does refer to as well. So without going too much in detail, you have the recommendations in front of you. I'm happy to go through some of those if you like. I believe the applicant has read through as well. Staff's here to answer any questions that the committee may have. And I know two of the members, and it looks like they brought a full team, so they've got a full team here to help with some of the questions.
Would
as
anyone
well.
like to make a statement or introduce yourselves?
I appreciate that, and I love the way this is organized. I'm going to go ahead and start here. I'm Steve Powell. I have worked with the owner for, it seems like my whole life. I've known him real well. An extremely good steward of the process, a good steward of the community, has lived in San Clemente pretty much his whole life, employs quite a few folks in San Clemente, and is a big fan of this industrial enclave. And I think that's really, really important to recognize. While we don't need to go into the inventory of properties, this is an area that he's passionate about. So I'm Steve Powell here representing, and this is...
I'm Jonas Dyer. I work with Steve as project manager.
I'm Brandon Powell. I work with Steve.
I'm Allie Bueller, and I work with the owner of the property, and I'm working to oversee it with these guys.
And Sean Sugarman, I'm the president of the owner's family office.
Very good. Well, welcome.
Thank you. And
Anybody else here on this project? No? Okay.
And I want to commend Kurt. Thank you very much, and also Stephanie. We worked early on with Stephanie as far as the process, and we take this kind of project very seriously. We build all over the country. We work for a couple of national credit tenants. Like I said, these are more than clients. This is family for us, and we just happen to be in the development community. So we do understand the process, and we're very adept as far as design review. And we always, the first thing that we asked Stephanie, first time we came up here, is there a design review committee? Is there design standards? Is there somebody we can meet with? Is there, so that's really, really important. I think that the exercise that we're going through is arguably the most important part of the project. The intent, just to elaborate on what Kurt was saying here and to give a little bit of history, I think everybody's familiar with this building. I believe that it's somewhat iconic in this area. They've been around since the 1950s. These folks just moved out, same owner, same business, same distribution. The building itself, if you've never been in there, is quite frankly amazing when it comes to lumber. If you know anything about the building industry, this would be considered a Type 5 construction. But you take a look at the floor joists in there. They're 2x16. They're almost clear. They're 12 inches on center. There's as much lumber in that floor system as there is in Kings Canyon. The building itself, though, has been used and loved, but not maintained. As such, the stucco, the water infiltration, as far as back in the day in the 1950s, the building wasn't built with ADA compliance in mind. The roof, I believe, is the original roof. It has quite a bit of Henrys up there to help patch it and make it not leak. But when the owner identified this piece of property, he thought, well, this is great because his business actually is along the same lines as their business. Now, while it's not janitorial, strut, which you'll see is branded on there, that's right now is sort of a placeholder for the signage, which would be under a separate permit in the future, in the near future, hopefully, but is also a distributor of automotive, high-end automotive parts. They're an innovator. The inside of the building, other than being updated, really doesn't change. 2 bathrooms right now are non-compliant. 2 new bathrooms will be compliant. There will be a couple of offices. Most of the space that would remain on the primary floor will be just that, except it will be enhanced and elevated, like Kurt had mentioned. We have to do something about the roof. And then the basement level will be the same thing, except cleaned up. There's a lot of efflorescence. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done in order to bring the building into to where it doesn't leak and that sort of thing. But in order to make this function, we not only need to fix the roof, but we would like to be able to elevate it and then also embrace the architectural style that area is. It's difficult to sort of identify what is the architectural style. We came up with coastal industrial. It could be chic industrial, but we can't deny the fact that Robertson's is over there. There's RV mechanical places that are working on that sort of thing, and we've got surfboard manufacturers and the artists and that sort of thing. And I think that is something.
The whole area is an incubator for the system. A business incubator.
It is a business incubator, and it's sort of a think tank, and it's really without getting into, because I love this company. And they're very inspiring and very motivating, and to be able to have this, the owner honestly wants to be able to embrace that, but also enhance the style of the building. So to say, well, let's tear this thing down and make it look like what would be predictable Spanish Mediterranean really is sort of an insult to the area. So the materials that were specified for this project, we have 2 architects on board. One of them is a Newport Beach architect, which is our design architect, and then we have our CD, or our working drawing architect, out of San Diego. And we spent a lot of time. Now, while I know that the color elevations, and I think they're in the packet here, and we've got some renderings, are more, it's old school, sort of a crayon kind of a concept when it comes to the rendering. It wasn't
You're actually talking to 2 architects.
Okay, so then you can appreciate. And you may know Doug Mansfield.
Very well.
Okay, well, Doug
He used to work for me.
I hope that's a good thing. Yeah. All right. Well, then you understand, and Doug's been really instrumental. And quite frankly, I'm an architectural buff, and I love to be able to communicate with guys that still use flimsy or rice paper and work along those lines. So when we got together multiple times on this is not a by accident design. This is not what we think is cool. This is a blend of the what exists and what could be, and it embraces the brewery down the street. It embraces the culture of manufacturing surfboards. And this is also, and I'm not going to speak out of line here, but the owner has got a passion for that, to be able to enhance this area and provide a place for these folks to stay without pricing them out of the area. So I can make the argument, does this make sense or not? Well, part of this equation, part of the ROI is the fact that he can create this.
Okay, very good. Well,
So
I think you sold us.
I know. Well, I'm passionate about it too, so I have got to get it off my chest. Some of the comments that did come up in here, I would like to address as we go through it.
And when we get to discussion, we'll ask you questions on them and so forth. Any direct questions to the applicant or the staff member?
What's the purpose of the water channel?
Okay.
Okay. We get it's actually an absorption system. If you want to talk about the tank.
Oh, the tank. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. So the tank, again, one of the objectives would be to try to make this a net zero. Well, it's not believable to make it net zero because of the constraints that we have. The tank, all the elements that you see on this building are not there just as faux. That would, in the back side of the building, so on the left, the upper elevation on the left side there's sort of like a parapet. That parapet, the elevated area is the corrugated metal. That would encapsulate the mechanical equipment. One of those pieces of equipment is a Gen M it's a harvesting machine. Basically, it would be the size of like a single-phase transformer, a little bit bigger, maybe a 3 by 3 by 3 foot high, and it harvests moisture out of the atmosphere. And they come in different sizes. One of the beta tests that they had in the office was able to produce, a few cups of water a day, just as a test, like a Sparklet's drinking water size. This one here could produce up to about 200 gallons. The environment is correct for it, and it's 200 gallons of fresh water that's extracted out of the air. The generator itself has got a tank, and that tank can house the water. The tank that is on the building itself, scale-wise, is about 5,000 gallons. Well, one, we can't support that kind of weight, but there's a tank within the tank, and that tank would be between 500 and 1,000 gallons to be able to keep generating this water. That would go up. There would be a bypass system to where that would be enough water to supply the capacity of the building. You only have a couple of bathrooms and a drinking fountain and a mop sink. So that would more than suffice that. In the event there wasn't any moisture or we weren't able to produce water or something like that, then city water would be the backup. So the tank there, it goes based on what you would see in New Jersey or New York, in the old buildings where the apartments had that. That was the design inspiration there.
Very good. Okay, any direct questions or want to go into discussion?
On the colors, I want to talk about the cupolas and understand that better. But on the colors of was staff recommending shown with red frames on the windows? Were you guys recommending those go to black?
Darker color, like a brown, maybe to match on the wood fascia surrounding on the building, and also on the water tower.
Okay, and then so the roof is going to be the rusted, like a cortina corrugated, right?
Well, the design guidelines require that it has to be. It can't not be that. It can't have patches to it. So the recommendation is that it be a bronze or a dark brown or something, painted as uniform one color.
So, but then below the roof, like let's say on the west elevation on the left end, you've got under the gable, and then it sounds like a little parapet as well. Is that kind of that color that's shown, or is that going to be a different color?
On the west elevation?
The west elevation, the left side, of that under the gable, shown kind of like a red, orangey, and then below the parapet, I guess. What colors are those going to be?
The brown or bronze on that portion to match on the roof.
Okay, so what's represented as kind of reddish to me.
Yeah.
It's really going to be brown or bronze.
That's what we're recommending.
That's what you're
Yeah.
This look.
Yeah, and so, and I like to be able to respond to that also. Yeah.
Okay.
So do you mind if I stand up there just so make sure I'm okay?
Do you want this slide? Or?
No, this is fine.
Okay.
This is perfect. So existing plate height right now is right here at this line. And so this section up here, this transom windows section, is a steel superstructure that has windows in between. That would be more along the lines of what Kurt was saying, that is the bronze or almost black color. This did not translate well. This is more of a burgundy, so it's not fire engine red, but it's more of in the red hues. If you go to the New Balance, to use that as an example, in the factory outlets, they have fixtures that are on the walls there that are sort of a mauve-y, red, burgundy color. That was to give it some pop. The rusted corrugated panels that are on the roof, that comes in this area here, and it's also on the gable ends. We're not using just a galvanized steel that we hope will rust one day. This is it's a galvanized metal that would be with a Hudson sprayer and a mixture. We just did this on a big wedding event venue in San Diego. Mixture of vinegar and hydrogen peroxide and salt. Spray on it. We can make it completely rusted. Yeah, long term it would last a long time, but it plays into the enhancement. We didn't want to go with a standing seam baked on brown roof. It would just be so predictable, and it wouldn't blend into the nature of that industrial chic look. So these elements, this element here, we saw the comments on trying to integrate some more of the weathered wood, which is on the tower there, and we could integrate that into the eave sections, into the fascia sections, If we had the belly band sections, we could do that with proper flashing on top. We're trying to minimize some of the maintenance on the building. On the front of the building, Kurt, there's another elevation on the front. Yeah, this one here. I saw some comments, maybe making this wood and this kind of thing, and that would be good. The existing structure right now that's out here is wood, and it literally is a life safety hazard. Surprised it actually has stood this long. We did a Panda Express project in San Diego where all of the patio covers, all of the roof elements and everything was all steel and let it rust, and it looks fabulous and it's super strong. So that was sort of the intent of these structures out here. The window elements above the existing plate line would be that bronze. Everything down below would be more of that burgundy color to give it a little bit of pop. And it's not this red. It is not that this is screaming red, but this was.
Is this a burgundy color?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit darker than that. So yeah, it's of that nature. Again, if we had to make the roof, the corrugated mirror roof, all rusted one color, sort of like what is in the picture for the landscaping, we could certainly do that. We would like to be able to age it to where it looked like it rusted naturally. That's sort of the intent. And even the rust of the drip lines, I know it sounds a little crazy, but coming down the side of the building, I think adds character to the building, and that was important for us.
Let's see, you have the floor.
So that above the new, under the gable on that, is that corrugated steel? The rusted corrugated steel?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then, sorry, Mark. So, Kurt, talk to me about the cupolas and whether they are or aren't mechanical equipment.
They're vents, and so we.
Are they, when you say vents, is it open air? Is there a little turbine inside? Is it?
No, I actually, I saw that when the staff report came out. Oh, I can't do that. So
Yeah.
these are barn vents, and that's what it is. And basically, what it is, it's really not a cupola. It is truly a vent. It's in lieu of this.
It's an architectural vent, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just to play into that so we don't end up with the whirlybirds. The whirlybirds here would actually meet the height requirement.
Right.
That just gives it sort of some stature, but it doesn't fall under the definition of a cupola.
Right.
Okay, Kurt,
Thank you.
Yes.
the water tank is on the roof,
Yes. Correct.
but it's under a different height limit.
Correct.
So if you did take a line from the upper base of the building to the lower base of the building, that cupola would, you say, be over by how far?
About 2.5
2.5
to 3 feet. Closer to the 2.5. I think it's more like if I was
It's
doing
almost
that-
right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So, Stephanie, we can, in some cases, allow a exception for a cupola, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And all we do is we make the definition that that's a cupola.
I'd like to take a look at the code because I want to say that is something that's just allowed by right. If it's
Well, I'm almost wondering that, like a chimney
right,
stack,
Right.
which is allowed to go
Correct.
X, so if we could confirm that, that would
Sure,
be
yeah.
helpful. Steve, do you have any questions for or want to do them during discussion, or?
I think it's all pretty clear.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like about the project. It's a super important location because it's kind of like the gateway to the, what's that area called?
Los Molinos District.
What's it called?
Los Molinos.
Los Molinos, yeah. No, that zone, because there's a name for it.
Oh, the incubator?
Come on, Jonathan. Yeah,
Yeah,
Surf Canada.
We're trying to be careful.
No, that's so it needs,
God bless you.
It is eclectic.
Yeah.
It is.
And
it needs an entryway feature.
Yeah.
So it's great that you guys are doing this. And that's pretty exciting. So, and there's a lot to like about the design. And I understand we're just looking at the building today, even though they're proposing landscape, because so much of this property are site features, like that wall,
Yeah.
the pipe railing on top of the wall, the back wall that I think, Kurt, you suggested, maybe a mural or something.
Yeah, on this one right here, actually, as
On
you're
the ramp wall.
entering in, yeah.
Well, yeah, and even, that wall is almost part of the building.
Yeah.
So I think, a comment I would have is that, the site features, such as they are, really right now, it's just to define that access to the basement with that roll-up door. And then if you can show an image further along the frontage, it goes all the way around the corner, right? You don't really show one.
On the landscape plan, maybe.
On towards
Because I
over on the other
would
side.
actually, he brought up some points I would like to speak to
So
also.
there's, as you go around, there's a fence, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry, I
this
didn't
is an
do that
important
one.
part.
Okay. And that fence is it this small photo that we see on the,
What page is that?
Yes, on the landscape, yes, that's it.
right here?
Correct.
Okay, and I think we have a bigger. So that's going to be the corrugated, and you said it's galvanized first? So it's
Yeah.
hot dip?
Well, yeah, no, it's a, what we used over at this, it's called Lavender and Olive, it's a wedding event venue, is we did use a lot of raw steel and we used some galvanized, but with the proper mixture and a Hudson sprayer, you can make it look like this almost instantaneously. It's overnight, but
How does it weather?
it weathers fantastic. It'll last, God, for decades. It'll last for decades.
Okay.
But along those lines, because I think it's important to point out, and Kurt's absolutely right. This is sort of a phased approach. This is for all intents and purposes, it's a large piece of property. It's under an acre, but for the area, it's big. We're not changing the footprint. We're not changing the circulation. We're trying to enhance some of the on-site aspects of it. As such, the owner desired, right now there is a 6-foot-high chain link fence with privacy slats that goes around the perimeter. That chain link fence sits on a compromised retaining wall. So, I mean compromised, it's like, it sort of walks all over the place. The historical use of the balance of the property has been to store RVs and that sort of thing. There's still some of that. There's been a lot of cleanup activity here. The owner himself has got some vehicles that he'd like to store, but he would also like to screen them from the street view. And one of the first discussion points we had with Stephanie was, we'd like to go to 8 feet tall. 8 feet tall makes it more of a discretionary. So as such, that fence that goes around the perimeter is pushed back. It's being proposed to be pushed back 2 feet. There is a 2 feet, so it goes curb gutter on Los Molinos, curb gutter, landscape strip, sidewalk, an additional 2-foot dedication right there that's going to have vines, trumpet vines, variegated trumpet vines that are on the image board here, and then that corrugated fencing that would mirror this, because it completes the property, but it doesn't complete the balance of what would happen in the future on the balance of this.
So you're talking about a long Rincon court
Correct.
and the rest of it?
Yes, the project frontage. As such, when he acquired the property on Rincon Court, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 existing palm trees there, and those palm trees were overgrown and had never been attended to for, I don't know, decades. So our first reaction was, hey, we got to take these things out. And then he said, oh, wait a minute, we're going to go up there and clean them up. And if you look at page 10 on that packet that Jonas handed out, this was the first attempt at the cleanup operation, but the fronds before literally went all the way down to the ground. And so we've had an arborist out there take a look at it. Hey, should we get rid of this? Because one of the discussion points was, do we continue the curb gutter and sidewalk all the way around Rincon Court? Well, we can't do it with palm trees there. So what's the lesser of two evils? And what we've had lengthy discussions on this, and we did talk to Kurt and Stephanie about this. So what we had proposed is the curb return that exists on the corner of Rincon and Los Molinos, that needs to be improved in order to get into compliance because of the way it is right now. But we would stop the sidewalk, so to speak, or at the curb return, and then leave it as the landscape strip in order to preserve the existing palm trees. Otherwise, they would have to go away. the existing palm trees would be there. On the back side of the palm trees would be the 2-foot variegated trumpet vines, and then the corrugated fence. That's the best way I could describe it, but looking at the trees, they add so much to the area, you can't take these trees out and transplant them. It would destroy the street, they're too big, the trunks are too big, but they aren't destroying anything right now, they're nestled in that spot, and we would like to be able to keep them.
Okay, thank you.
Are you guys doing sorry,
Go ahead.
oh, sure. Are you guys doing a dedication along there? Because I see proposed PL and existing PL. It looks like the existing PL is maybe out by the curb and gutter, but you're saying dedicate like 5 feet or something?
You know, I don't know, and I think that's a discussion for Public Works or whatever department would be, but we were under the impression through the Alta survey that we performed is that there is a right-of-way and the curb gutter and area for sidewalk. As far as the 2 foot for the landscape, that is not a dedication. I probably used the wrong word. That is just going to be a landscape strip that we do in order to offset some of the extra height for the perimeter fencing.
Right. Your plan says proposed PL, so that caught my attention.
Yeah,
And then I see it says existing PL up here. So
and that may be, that dedication may be required. And we have a surveyor that went ahead and put that together. We had to do a recorder survey too that was very awkward.
I think that was
So
maybe
this
the original
hasn't gone
property
through
line
development
went on the
management
sidewalk.
team?
No,
Because that would be usually identified at that point in time.
right, we didn't have it before, so we did reach out to engineering and.
Okay.
I'll have to look back. I don't remember if there was a requirement for dedication. I will double check. I'll check with Zach or Rob.
So, another question.
Go ahead.
Is there, where that driveway goes in, on the left image, it looks like you have some, half diamond planters where you're gonna put some trees, I think you said?
Yes,
that?
those would be new tree wells.
On that side, the purple.
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, there's an opportunity there, I think, to add some landscape along that wall, if you're gonna do it that way, and maybe even consider like a green wall on that side. The reason is because I think you guys are doing a wonderful thing here, and if you could carry it through more with the landscape, so that it feels like you're really setting the pace for this whole area. I think that's kind of what's missing. I mean, I like what you're doing architecturally. I like the clear story, you say steel sash up along the top. I mean, you have skylights and you have clear story windows. That
And-
upper level is going to be pretty well.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
It'll be beautiful. Along those lines, and we've scratched our head over this a lot. That's an existing retaining wall that has an average elevation change of about 4 feet that runs along here. As it is right now, if this was to be built today, it would be considered, well, it's legal non-conforming, quite frankly, as far as the way the parking stalls would work for full transparency. There isn't any extra room to add. That's why we went with a half diamond. If we can go with a full diamond or a finger, that would be great, but it literally eliminates parking, and there isn't enough room to add that strip. The retaining wall itself it's this high. It's not offensive, and there is some gating that exists right here, and I'm not sure if that is the plan in the future, because architecturally the building will stand out on its own. Some of the enhancements, again, is doing this and doing this along here. We have such limited availability for landscape that we tried everything we could. That's why we came up with this without compromising the compromised parking, so to speak. I did see a comment that was suggesting some raised planters, possibly maybe like precast concrete planters. That actually could probably work in this area here, in this area here. One of the things that we are looking at, because underneath and I know that we're really not talking about the inside of the building, but we would like to add an elevator, and that elevator is just to be able to provide access from the basement level to the first level. That elevator shaft is actually the base of the water tower, so it's all integrated beautifully. You would never know it's there. As such, we need to upgrade this to 3-phase power. We have single phase right now. We've got a vault located down here. We have E4, which is one of the local heroes here. I'm sure you guys are familiar. They're working on this design with SDG&E. We have another vault up here. How we are going to get three phase from here to there, we're still working on that, but it looks to me like we might end up with a slight boundary adjustment of sorts. There's 3 legal lots here, but maybe possibly, doing something where we put the 3-phase here, put the planter here, put the planter there, but that is really the limiting factor. There is existing, they're almost just like pots of plants right here, 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 and here, and we could embrace that by doing same thing precast. It also becomes a good way to stop cars. And I love the idea of whoever came up with that as far as the mural, and I'm speaking sort of out of line here, but again, this is a fellow that would totally embrace the artistic element with that, and having a mural along that wall, I think is a fantastic idea, and I think that can go along the lines with the same when we get to the signage permit aspect of it.
Very good. This question I've got for Stephanie, Kurt, and Jonathan. How do we justify the fact that we're doing a pretty intense remodel to the building and we're not requiring the full site to meet the current requirements? Usually when there's a major remodel, the nexus ties to the site also to be improved. So what do we use to say, well, they're doing so much, but we're not requiring them to do the landscape and provide it?
And is this with regard to existing nonconformities on the site, or just that all of the improvements?
Well, usually when you redo a building to a certain percentage, you got to also bring the site up to standards.
The landscape percentage, is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to recommend it to Planning Commission. We're going to want to have that solved before it gets there.
No, understood. No, and I appreciate what you're saying. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I will clarify that, this is a discretionary process. That's the reason why this project is required to go to Design Review Subcommittee. So it's really, within the subcommittee members, full discretion to request those changes or make those recommendations as we continue through the process. So if it's a little, subjective in some ways, but there isn't a specific code standard that says it needs to be brought up to X percentage of landscaping. It's, intended to be looked at as an overall package, and we do have precedent where I personally have worked on a project where all of the improvements were focused on one specific portion of the site, but through the DRC process, the subcommittee members recommended that they take a look at the site holistically and make sure that they applied landscaping in a more cohesive fashion across the entire site. So that's really up to the discretion of
I just want to have a foundation that if we say to the other planning commissioners that we didn't see it necessary to bring it up, and they're going to say, why? And I think that question has to be answered before we can. Otherwise, you've got 3 commissioners. Here's there's 7 on the commission.
Yeah, and I will clarify that this goes to zoning administrator, not planning commission.
Only zoning administrator, okay. But that's a different ballgame.
Yeah. With the interpretation that we have architectural vents, not cupolas, so that we don't have to go the conditional use permit route.
Gotcha.
Cupolas.
And I think while we're mentioning that, Kurt and I did touch base with regard to the question of what process it would need to go through with regard to the height of the cupola. And there is a specific, it mentions it within the staff report. Cupolas are specifically called out within the code as requiring a CUP if they wanted to exceed the height limit of the zone. So it's unfortunate, but that's unfortunately what the code specifically says.
But there can be an exception.
That's correct, but through the CUP process. So, Kurt can speak to that, but if that is something that's triggered, then that would require the overall project to go to Planning Commission instead.
Unless you call this thing a screen for a rotating vent.
Because it is the vent.
Because I realize, I'm saying it's the screen for the vent that's inside it.
Which I want to make for the record, I'm not in support of this.
No.
That's-
Okay, let's move this along. We've got,
I'm sorry, can I ask another question?
we'll do that in a second.
Sure.
Let's do that during discussion.
No worries.
So let's open it up, close the presentation, open it up for public discussion. Anyone want to make any comments on the project? Okay, we will open it up for full discussion then, and you ask your question.
So, the vacant portion of the site used to be RV parking. What's its intended use after the remodel? Is it just gonna stay vacant until you guys decide to do something else?
It's
with it?
vacant. It still has a certain degree of RV parking, so it will be there. Some of it is for the owner's own use, but that's not the long term. This is a phased approach, like I said, and to answer your question, we actually asked the same question that you so wisely asked, because we asked the same thing. There are 3 legal lots here, and there's a definition of APNs versus legal lots, and we did go through a full survey on that. We have grant deeds and we have certifications, and so we at one point thought, well, wait a minute, let's just go ahead and we'll do a boundary adjustment. We'll do a boundary adjustment, and we'll keep the elements on that one lot, that sole and separate lot. That's not a benefit to the overall streetscape. So we're trying to address the streetscape portion of it. The property is too valuable to be an RV lot. That's what it has been. It's the phased approach. First phase, remodel the building, 1, to get it life safety compliant. 2, functions. It's the same use as what it is before. So there really isn't anything there. We're not changing the footprint. Address the streetscape side, so it's pleasant. Then the next phase would be an additional project that is yet to be defined on the balance of the property. But it's not to make $1,500 or $2,000 a month for RV rental.
Right.
That's certainly not it. Right now, it's a placeholder, but we've got to get through the extensive remodel first.
Thanks. So, Kurt and Stephanie, the answer to Bart's question on basically there is some discretion to not require the 10% landscaping given the scope of what they're doing. That's your answer, right?
That's correct. So there's typically, and I don't recall the code section off the top of my head, but again, it's all reviewed through the discretionary process. Typically, we rely on DRC to make that determination as far as how close it needs to come with regard to complying with current site landscaping standards. So in some cases, we've had situations where they're well under whatever the minimum landscape standard is, and that DRC has requested that the entire site be brought into conformance with current site landscaping standards. But we've also had situations where it didn't always make sense. So again, it's more through that discretionary process where you could recommend that they increase the amount of site landscaping to get it closer to being compliant.
So, but down the road, let's say they come in and propose a new building on that RV portion of the site right now. Then you guys would for sure be saying, hey, the whole site's got to come up to landscaping standards, correct?
Correct. And part of that too, which Steve did touch on, is that you can see they have it noted. We did ask them for a title report, grant deed, and that information that does identify that there are 3 lots. So if they did come back in the future to build something in here, they would have to do a lot merger or lot line adjustment or lot consolidation at that point, and then we would start to trigger into more of the overall site and those requirements as well.
And we would expect that.
And because it exists,
What's the zoning on it? Is it?
light industrial.
Okay,
Yeah.
light industrial.
Sorry, sir. The point being that the building exists with those lots, that's why we're asking the title, and it shows it, so it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought it was odd too.
Yeah.
Okay, what are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I kind of see where Bart's going in terms of the whole site, and that's what I alluded to in the beginning, is I think the landscape, even if it's not up to the percentage, which it doesn't seem like it should be or needs to be, it should be a bigger part of what you're doing. I love the architecture. I think that you're not changing the footprint, but you're making a significant improvement to the building by adding the gable and some of the materials. I think you're setting a nice precedent for the ghetto as it were. Especially, I mean, when I drive, everybody sees that
Yeah.
that property, and you see that massive wall, which I don't have a problem with, because I like the simplicity of it. So I like the fact that you just left the punched openings,
Mm-hmm.
and then you added the the overhang for the gable and the clear story. I think it's elegant and industrial, but I'd like to see something with that corner. I mean, all you see is pavement. Even if there was a nice, steel railing with cables, or because right now you just got that pipe.
Oh, on top of the retaining wall.
Yeah, top of the
Yeah,
retaining wall.
and that absolutely, we can take a look at that, because I'm not a big fan of that railing. I'm not a big fan of what they have in the front, but I think that could be, we can embrace what we're doing with steel, and I think the steel cable idea, that plays into it well. Along
So I think all I'm saying is, we're not trying to show you how to design the thing, but you're off to a great start, but you've sort of separated the site, at least what you see, because you see right into it
Mhm.
from the architecture. So I think it's just going to take a few moves on those walls and railing, and trying to get some sort of green along the other side where you already have those.
And that's where we were hoping with the
Great
trees to be able to add some canopy and that sort of thing, because with the cars there, it pretty much blocks everything, but you could see it is compromised with the existing retaining wall, and we have to respect that elevation change. The other side, for full transparency on that, right now is pretty much 100% paved over. It's a blend of concrete and asphalt. And so to take anything of that up, especially with stormwater issues,
I don't think you have to. I mean, you've got. It doesn't take a lot of room to do some vines with some sort of a steel lattice or something along that edge. That's all we're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't
soften
think we're
things
talking
up a little
about.
bit.
and maybe what we could do is add more diamonds, and then just as long as we can, keep the
Yeah, that's
and then
always-
maybe work it that way, and then
if you
that
put
can
vines
work.
at 6-7 feet,
And we
outside,
can do that.
you can cover that whole.
We could do that.
whole
Yeah.
wall.
Very good.
That would
I will say that I'm actually pleased with the improvement to the site, the building in particular, and Kurt. It's not specifically mentioned about the roof not being a uniform color. And back in the 60s and 70s, we used cork hen steel for all sorts of stuff. Did you find something specific that says we need to do that, or?
The design guidelines, 2D says metal roofing systems with integral color, earth tone may be used. However, bright colors and highly reflective wall surface, including unpainted galvanized metal roofing, are strongly discouraged. So that was the only concern, if it's considered unpainted, and
It would be
I think
that.
what you're saying is clear galvanized. This is not galvanized.
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah.
patina.
That's how we're bringing the
I
color
want to
in.
make sure we comply. I mean, I'm fond of it myself, but and I think it kind of takes the date away from when this was done, and I like that. You can't really, looking at the building, you don't really have the slightest idea of what period it's actually representing.
if it does,
and I like that.
sorry to interrupt, if it does help, because I had looked at that a few times as well, it says, however, bright colors and highly reflective wall surfaces, including, so.
If this isn't reflective at all.
Right.
No.
So if the interpretation is that is not reflective and considered
Okay.
Well, the treatment is like a paint.
Right, well, it's a natural, the treatment's
It's a
actually
treatment.
a
It's a treatment.
natural.
It's not an untreated corrugated metal. It's treated in color.
You mean what they're saying in the,
But the treatment that he's proposing, that's going to give it the rusted look, is a treatment.
it's a natural patina.
Yeah.
The metal's doing it to
Exactly.
itself.
And we encourage it with hydrogen peroxide and such.
What do you guys think about the red sash?
I don't like it.
I don't mind it. There are some other colors that we use in the city, but for this particular building, it
It doesn't bother me. I think it needs to be more of a sort of blood red as opposed
A
to
little deeper than what we see here.
yeah.
And that's certainly, we just don't want something that looks like it was a track home, and it has to have that, the windows are gonna be steel. I mean, you know, they're not vinyl. So it's just really embracing that. The garage doors are not roll-up, and they are more aircraft. They're bifold, what you would find on an aircraft hangar. They're art studio-esque, and that's really important to us.
So everything is steel sash, all the new.
Everything,
Windows?
everything that you see on the existing level, believe it or not, that's all remaining. Those are all steel sash, and you would like to be able to go in there and hand glaze them and hand paint them, which it would be less expensive to do it the other way, but that embraces
very elegant way
what
to
it
do
was.
it.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's the plan, is to go with the steel sash windows.
So, Kurt, what's the exact process this goes through now? You'll get recommendations from us.
Yep.
They'll be implemented. Does it come back here for one last before it gets approved, or?
You know, again, that's certainly at the discretion of the subcommittee.
I mean, I'd love to see.
I like to see it again, just because I
improved, but I don't
really
want to
like the
slow things
project.
up either.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
I would say that from staff's perspective, there are a number of different design recommendations that would change the overall look of the project, and especially if this does go the ZA route, staff would feel more comfortable bringing it back to
Yeah,
DRC.
we'd love to see it again and work with you.
And I'm supportive of the staff recommendations about the colors, the reclaimed wood, all those recommendations you made.
So the direction on that, we would like to be able to have, our objective is to feel comfortable, as you can appreciate, to be able to get into CDs, because everything is a time crunch, especially with, supply chain issues. We would like to be able to get into it with a level of confidence. Ordering these doors could be 9 months out. I mean, it's a big deal for us. We would also like to have a level of confidence of going in, as far as if you don't like a cat face or a Santa Barbara texture and you want a sand finish, that's fine. That's great. But do we need to render up a tan building with brown windows? Is that what we need to do? Or what's the recommendation along those lines?
Personally, I'm not a fan of a tan color. I don't mind the contrast.
Yeah.
I think that was staff's recommendation, right?
And it was based on one of our other planners who met with several of the property owners in a workshop meeting, discussion with them in a workshop meeting recently. Their emphasis was what they did, because this is the eclectic zone, and that what they did not want specifically was a Spanish looking. They wanted to stay away from that look. And with the white, this actually was not formally presented, but just kind of like, hey, this is something that we're talking about. And they said they love the building. They did want to see it stay away from looking any type of Spanish or the white walls or anything. So that was.
What
that's
about,
where that
instead
kind
of a
came from.
tan, what about a warm gray? Tans are just.
Tans, I even though it's a color, I think it would be offensive for what the intent is here. A warm gray would be much more palatable, especially, but this is not a white. It's a cream. It's supposed to help transition between the areas that it surrounds and transitions into that industrial.
It leans more gray than pink.
And this was a
One
big
thing that'd be
discussion
helpful
with
when you come
the
back
architects.
is to bring an actual mock-up sample of that
That's
plaster.
wonderful.
Sure, we can
The
do
rest
that.
Or
of
the
it-
actual color chips, because color photocopies, it always distorts and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And then I would hope that before it comes back, is it scheduled for development management team?
Yes, yeah, so it is
Excellent.
scheduled. with
Because
the-
they'll have comments that may change, sidewalks or whatever, where
Discussion,
Okay.
but if not,
your utilities are.
after that.
Sure.
It might have some impact, but probably not much. But I'm excited about the project. I can
It's a
say,
fantastic project.
Yeah, it looks great.
Well,
Nice
yes,
job.
and our intent is completely genuine. So I'd like to just make sure we understand our assignment on the next go-around and how that would be scheduled, because we don't want to do anything that is anybody say, oh, no, that's terrible. I mean, obviously, we put a lot of thought into trying to make it, the best it possibly can be, and I want to make sure that we don't disappoint on the next go-around.
I don't think you have to do
I
that
don't think
much.
you will.
I mean, it's only the landscape and kind of addressing the rest of the site.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
building's
You
pretty
can.
good.
Okay.
The landscaping, and where the fence is going to end up, you may find something in the development management team that moves things around a little bit.
Sure, okay.
May open things up or not.
Did we answer your question sufficiently about, going forward with CDs or ordering certain things? Did we give you an answer on that?
No, to be honest with you,
Make your question more specific.
Okay, so in order to, because it's going to take us a while to develop CDs, obviously, so as far as,
That's certainly things that we can discuss offline in terms of just procedurally. That's really more something that you can discuss with
Okay.
staff, okay?
okay,
There's certainly a overlap that can occur with regard to the entitlement process, as well as preparing CDs and submitting them into plan check.
okay.
So let's discuss that.
Sure,
offline.
okay, then maybe I'll end it on this point. What I would like to avoid is a conditional use permit. I mean, we process major
Understood.
use, conditional use, and we don't want to get,
We understand
that was,
Kirk's direction on that too.
but we also don't want to compromise the architectural enhancements. I mean, we can go to the whirly-bird thing, but that's so predictable. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
I think Kirk can come up with a justification
Okay.
for that.
So we're looking at them as architectural events, not cupolas, in the chimney
Call it whatever you
family.
need to.
Yeah.
Sort of in the chimney family. I
Right,
guess.
we'll touch
fair
base.
enough.
Let's touch base with Adam
Great.
as well, just make sure we're all on the same page in terms of interpreting the code.
And I think all the neighbors are going to love it too.
I think they will. I truly do. This is a blessed owner that is got an amazing team, and we're proud to be a part of it. So,
Very good.
all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Tell
that.
Doug that I say hi.
I will. No, that's great. He was supposed to be here tonight, but maybe we'll bring him on the next go around. Say, Doug, sorry, they kicked us out. You better clean it up
There you go.
now.
I appreciate that.
No, thank you very much, and we're available. But I do feel, reading between the lines, I think I would like to be able to get going on at least the structural part of it. And
Well, I
then,
don't think we're changing the shape of the
Yeah, I don't
building
think
or the openings.
great.
So,
That's fantastic. All right, well, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And you know
Thank
what? God bless you, having a couple of architects on this. I serve on boards myself, and yeah,
he's worked with developers and all, so he's
and
well-versed.
understanding the construction process is just mandatory for these groups. Good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Our next item is
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you. New business. And this is outdoor dining program for 2022-2023, a review of potential design and development standards for temporary outdoor dining uses in 2022 and 2023 under the enabling legislation of AB 61 and SB 314. And just so we know, something to keep in the back of our heads, at that meeting at City Council, when this was brought up, it was commented that this is temporary and we may consider keeping it. So we got to be real careful.
Yeah, so if I could comment on that real quick. So temporary versus, some form of permanence with outdoor dining. The intent of what this review is regarding building on the legislation that the state passed that has a time frame cap to 2022, 2023. So there's no intent for these guidelines to extend beyond that window, the 2023 window. We would have to go back to get Coastal Commission approval for a permanent program, and that may be something that we initiate during this period of time. I'm aware that Laguna Beach went through a similar process that took them over a year, so it's something that we'd have to spend more substantive time on if we wanted to consider a permanent change to our code, which this is not what we're currently discussing. Probably the ordinance.
And I hope City Council, all members understand that, and I'm not sure they do.
Okay, so I'll make sure that we relay that to Planning Commission clearly, that most likely the ordinance that we bring in March would be something tied to temporary uses and structures that has a clear sunset to the end of 2023.
Very good. You have the,
Yeah, so
you're presenting it? Very
That's
good.
what- Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah,
if you guys want to move to the other side, you're welcome.
yeah, please
You
do.
have
If you
to,
don't
but-
mind, anyone that would like to come join at the table, and then if we could do quick introductions of anyone that's here and interested in this topic.
We'll just go around the room and everybody can introduce themselves.
My name's Aaron Rodman. I'm with Villas El Ranchito.
Chris Aiken, I'm with H.H. Cottons and also the chair of the Downtown Business Association.
Okay?
Adam Matamian, I'm the Deputy Community Development Director.
Cecilia Gallardo Daly, Community Development Director.
I'm Julie Hines. I'm the director of the Subcommittee Downtown Business Association.
Alexandra Limber, the Riders Club Cafe. It's in North Beach, so that was kind of interesting.
Same, yeah.
Excellent.
Not Alex, yeah, sorry.
Very good.
Just curious, yeah. It is, I yeah, quite happy to like sit and just listen to see
Great.
what's going on in the neighbourhood.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We have obviously
Nothing
had
else to
some
do
concerns.
tonight,
Yeah. So this item tonight is in front of you. It's, I'm sure, a familiar item for you. So the staff report was pretty brief, providing just some context and then a few bullet points of consideration that the City Council wanted us to look into. Charting a path forward after design review, we'll be going to the Planning Commission for at least one visit. So I'll be targeting the January 19th meeting most likely, and then if needed, a subsequent meeting to clean up anything residual from that before ultimately going to the March 15th is the target for City Council to return with proposed program guidelines, parameters for, again, a temporary program under the state enabling legislation that would allow us to have, again, temporary outdoor operations between 2022 and 2023. So that's the path forward.
And the only thing the state's doing is the liquor license.
So
as far as the dining, we can do anything we want, just bare dining.
Correct. The liquor license is helpful. The other piece that the state has done is kind of remove the CEQA consideration for us of removal of parking requirements should that be of interest to the Planning Commission and Council. So there's not a requirement to park the outdoor expansions, but part of why we sunsetted the program at the end of this year is that we can revisit that and establish what we think is appropriate as opposed to just whatever is existing in place being grandfathered in. So that'll be a portion of Planning Commission discussion. Hopefully, my goal today is that we try to hone in on, for instance, the Santa Barbara guidelines and as much as possible hit on create a box of design. And then obviously Planning Commission will hit on a broader policy discussion beyond that.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay, so this is an item that came before Planning Commission, of course, in September, and those state enabling legislation items that I mentioned were later signed off, so a month later in October, that changed a bit our potential paths forward. And regardless, as I've mentioned, City Council did want to continue with the sunset of our existing programs so that we have the opportunity to reset any program parameters moving forward. Anyone that is interested in the permanent expansion of outdoor dining can still pursue that process. So just to be clear, I have talked to a few businesses that are interested in pursuing the minor architectural permit for a permanent build out of something. That's still an option for them. But as far as a streamlined option, that's something that we're looking to continue in some form or fashion moving forward. The council had some concerns, and to summarize those, I'm touching the wrong screen there. Some of those concerns were safety and making sure that we are providing sufficient distance or separation from vehicle traffic. Yes, of course, thank you. Any size limitations to the deck, and material standards, any discouraged elements that we want to just be clear that we do not want to encourage, making that clear. And then, of course, a consistent materials palette, standards for shading, and standards for height of any elements. So those were the basic parameters that we had to work with. I attached to this report the Santa Barbara guidelines that were referenced by a couple of commissioners at the Planning Commission meeting. That prior report, I had referenced and attached links to more extensive, more expansive parklet guidelines. The Santa Barbara ones are, thank you Stephanie for pulling those out, a little bit more concise, which I think is helpful for us today. So I hope that you had an opportunity to skim through those, and what I'd love to hear from you is any thoughts on the initial recommendations or topics of interest from council, and then if you have any areas from this parklet guideline document from Santa Barbara that you want to encourage or that you would like to have removed from consideration for San Clemente, I think that would give us a good starting point to build guidelines for San Clemente. That's really all that I have to offer today. Thanks.
Very good. So we'll get discussion started here. This isn't a typical presentation where we're going to have staff report and whatnot. So my first thought is a little different on the width and size of these things. And that to be able to figure out what the design should look like, we need a program of how big are these things, how many seats are anticipated, and I think we need to know that, come up with a good solution. Santa Barbara one talked about 6 feet from the curb. That's certainly done. We went, 20 feet, 18 feet in the previous effort at this. I'm not fully clear on the previous implementation of these decks. Was everybody allowed to have one? Was it just spotty, and how was it determined how many seats you were going to put there? I know we were replacing seats at that time.
Yeah.
That the restaurants had lost due to the distancing.
Sure.
And we may be in a case where distancing isn't going to be required this pass. So we're no longer replacing seats, we're adding additional seats over and above what was there before. So what's the thought on how much, how many?
Sure, that's a good question. So I'm going to rewind to your first question of was this open to anyone? And the answer to that is yes. It was open to anyone. There were several evolutions of this program throughout. If I could direct you to I think it's actually the final attachment in your report. So the final page. That's actually the final 2 pages. 4 pages. There we are. Thanks. And so I'm going to credit Julie over here with the DBA who assisted in this. And so back when this program was initiated in 2020, we did some outreach to all of the businesses to first get a sense of who was interested, because not all of the businesses were interested. Some of the businesses had concerns about maintaining spaces that were outside of their doors, about theft, vandalism, or whatever. So not everyone was interested in participating. That was especially true for retailers. Initially, we had also even considered street space for retailers. And there's a pretty universal lack of interest from them in using any of the street space. Obviously, the restaurants were more interested. So this was the preliminary program after we had heard back from a lot of those restaurants on Del Mar as to who was interested. So we tried to identify the locations of where those were. One of the challenges, of course, is that there's different contexts in front of each of these spaces. So some of them had bulb outs that are for public seating, or some of them had ADA spaces that required some creative shifting if they were interested but had those limitations in front of them. Another challenge, and you can see on this visual here, that sometimes there's clusterings of restaurants. You may have clusters of retail in some areas and clusters of restaurants in some areas, and so in this area in particular, I as a staff person got some complaints that we had a row of restaurants that were consecutive. That's something for discussion with Design Review and Planning Commission. I'm not really looking to weigh in on that topic, but overall point, yes, it was open to everyone, and we tried to accommodate interest in that wherever, whenever possible. And if you go to the very first page, Stephanie, there was a calculation that showed the use of parking spaces. So we used about a quarter of the parking spaces that were available on Del Mar in implementing this program.
So this graphic represents what was built out during the pandemic?
Yeah, during 2020. I don't think that this graphic shows, for instance, the Italian restaurant towards the bottom of Del Mar that came later. It also includes a couple of restaurants like Muse Sushi that removed their dining from the street. So it's an earlier representation, but it just shows kind of the initial way that that was outlined.
Jonathan, I have a question, and it kind of relates to what the second question Bart asked about occupancy. Was the purpose and intent of the legislation to allow restaurants to increase capacity, or was it simply a remedy to address distancing due to COVID and spread out the customers?
Yeah, that's a good question, and sorry I didn't get to your second question there. So that was clearly our initial intent, is that the restaurants had to completely shut down, and then they were given an allowance to open up, but with spacing constraints or occupancy constraints that obviously limited their ability to operate successfully. So that was a remedy that we were, or a part of that initial discussion. Moving forward, those occupancy rates changed gradually and eventually got back to full capacity. The state legislation is actually silent on occupancy or increases in occupancy. So, reading between the lines, the intent is that there was broad public support throughout the state for this newfound outdoor dining opportunity, and the state wanted to enable that to continue. I think that that's within the purview of the Planning Commission's discussion to determine what level of increase could be reasonable. I would say that getting to a policy question that we can resolve with Planning Commission would be a conversation that I need to have with our building official to see whether any increases would trigger additional requirements, for instance, of like additional restroom capacity for any of those businesses, because then that might limit the amount that they could increase, and we would need to be clear about that in the program guidelines.
So with these temporary, because you're saying there's going to be a sunset, how much can we really impose on something where they're going to have to store, change, take down, if it's going to be temporary. So, my thought is that we still need to kind of consider it as potentially a more permanent solution, so that there's not this hardship of, hey, we spent all this money and we have a pretty nice outdoor dining space, and now we've got to completely change it. So have you given that some consideration, and is that
Yeah, so I'm saying temporary, but these are long-term temporary. Even if there is a removal of them over the winter period again next year, that's still a number of months. This is not like for a weekend event. This is for a longer-term placement. So
yeah, but even that, if you've got to move it for any length of time, you got to store the materials, or you've got lighting, you've got heaters, you've got, if we talk about a raised platform, I think we should talk about some consistency in planters. Things like that are going to cost money, right?
And if I could preempt one subject that I'd like to defer to the Planning Commission, but should be a topic at the Planning Commission, is while we've had these removed from Del Mar as of November and carrying through, moving forward, there is a CIP project on Del Mar that has been pushed back and now is likely to be in January of 23. But I've communicated to the downtown businesses. That's something that I do want them to communicate about and come to the Planning Commission with more of a unified voice of, would you be interested? Because there's two wants. There's a want for the outdoor dining, and there's a want for those improvements to occur. Does one take precedence? I do want them to be clear about that, and then the Planning Commission can create a recommendation for the council that's touches on that, of whether this program is, once these are in, they stay all the way through 2023, or whether there would be a removal considered in the winter. So that is something that will be a topic later on, but I do kind of want the DBA to have an opportunity to talk amongst themselves and bring that a cohesive recommendation forward.
Okay, it was not, and I want to find out one more time, because I've got a thought on this. How was it determined how many seats each restaurant got, or was it just arbitrary?
So the initial floor plans were somewhat based off of what's the shop frontage look like. And so the initial thinking was any parking spots that overlap your shop front would be considered, so it doesn't have to be wholly within, but you have your frontage and you may have 4 spaces where the outer 2 partially overlap. Those 4 would be considered at play for those businesses. That was the initial approach to this. We had a couple of exceptions, clearly, and there's been comments on that where there were interruptions and alternate accommodations made to find some opportunities. That was the initial setup, and then we required back then, show us your floor plan that shows the spacing, minimum separation of at least 6 feet between each table. So they would, the number of tables kind of came down to how they could accommodate their 4 tops or 2 tops based on those.
So it has nothing to do with parking whatsoever?
It was not coordinated with that, no.
When I was building this map, I actually gave everyone 3 spaces. And remember, Jonathan, we were talking about doing a percentage, a rough percentage of the capacity of the restaurant. And so I think we did 3 spaces for almost everybody and then 4 for some of the bigger restaurants. So it was a rough kind of attempt to replace the lost capacity inside.
Yeah, so that I do recall that there was some look at like what was their maximum occupancy and allowing for some of the restaurants that had 150 indoor seats an extra parking space versus someone who had 50 indoor seats. But that was not a mathematical approach. That was
okay. Because when I was going through this, I was trying to figure out how many should each guy get. And does a restaurant that's fully parked, has no debt in parking, should they be prioritized over a restaurant that's fully parked with the 16 extra seats for dining, which it comes out to what, four parking stalls? Mm-hmm. So they'd be a -1, and then you've got restaurants that might have parking that isn't sufficient, but they've made a agreement with a neighboring parking lot, are paying for those parking spaces. Do they take precedence over somebody who is fully parked because they've got waivers? So it almost seems there ought to be a hierarchy to make it fair for everybody, that they're impacting the retail parking availability equally, rather than somebody getting who's, let's say, underparked with waivers. Already they're using up public parking spaces, getting 25 seats out in front of the restaurant versus some guy who's fully parked and is only 30 feet wide or 20 feet wide, can't get the spaces. So that's why for the design of these things, we need to know how big are they going to be. A good example of well done outside patio is, was it Smashburger down by Panda Express? Shopping center down here. They've got a little eating area up there. It's 10 by about 25, and they get 20-something stalls in there. And that would only take 3 parking spaces. Well, you could take 2 and get 16 dining spaces, which is what our code repeats time and time again, that 16 some kind of magic number. That came through the general plan and GPAC committee and all that, you were welcome to have 16 spaces and not provide parking for it. So I'm starting to think that maybe we got a little carried away on the size of these things because we pushed it all the way out to the street. If we only went out 12 or 14 feet, you can put in some baller traffic planters, the round ones that keep cars out of the area, and only go out so far, which would make a much nicer street scene. Isn't permanent, pick them up with a little forklift and move them around. So I think we need to know, are we trying to maximize the seating in those parking spaces? We're really trying to do a nice job. And those could be built with the existing materials they've used for the decks already. I thought.
Well, I think, isn't the question, council's looking for some recommendations from us, is right? It's not,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, at design review, this is a working session, so we can talk about anything we want, but I absolutely agree that, how it should be built, what kind of uniformity, can they be tented or roofed? I'm not leaning that way by any sense, because the retail spaces next to them need good visibility of their signage and their storefronts and whatnot. Yeah, we can address the aesthetic things, and that's in the Santa Barbara one.
Well, let me ask you, is the Santa Barbara one, is that just on State Street, or where does that apply?
So there's a couple different areas of their city, and they actually have different design guidelines for each. But yes, State Street is one of the areas
they
where
did
that
it,
applies.
in a parallel parking versus diagonal. So, they couldn't get planters outside of that, but we have the ability to really make it nice.
Well, and I think there's a difference. If you look at State Street, the architecture is much more uniform. And so, and this approach that they have here is, in my opinion, is more of a sort of a fruit cocktail in terms of how it's going to look. Where, my impression of Del Mar is that the architecture is kind of a fruit cocktail. And so I think that these parklets, or whatever you want to call them, is an opportunity for us to kind of tie the streetscape together and create a little more of a rhythm than you have there. I think that would be a nice contrast. And so I'm glad you looked at this stuff, Bart, because I didn't think about that. But you make a good point, because we do have an opportunity to do more here than they do on State. I mean, they have these massive sidewalks, which we don't have, right? So it's kind of a trade-off. And they have nice paving and all that kind of stuff. It's a totally different look. But I think that area between, I like the idea of not going out the full depth of the parking space, because then maybe we get some nice planters that we use. Okay, this is a consistent planter. Everybody uses these. The material, and we have a palette of landscape that can be used. And certainly it needs to be drought tolerant and stuff like that. But I think that's an opportunity for us to really create a nice streetscape. And then looking at the heating elements, so that it is something that, though I like eave heaters and stuff, I mean, it makes more sense, I think, to have the individual heaters so that they can, if they have to, they can move them to different locations and do that kind of stuff. So I would suggest that we sort of pick and choose some of the ideas, because there's some good ideas in here. And I even saw some good ideas in some of the letters. Like the one from Wayne, I think, had some good ideas. There was probably 2 or 3. I think a couple of them came in just today.
That's the little park down in our shopping center that's in front of Smashburger. And see how they handle their heaters? They're on both ends. They aren't the tall, bulky ones. And
that's a permanent.
Can I make a suggestion? Can I suggest maybe that we invite the members of the public that have given up enough of their time to say what they have to say. I know Jill, I read her email, she had great suggestions. And then I would
and we
suggest,
did read them all, by the way.
and then I would suggest that we go through just use the Santa Barbara thing, if nothing else, as a framework because it touches on the topics, right? So we could go through it and say, okay, let's talk about size, let's talk about stormwater, let's talk about design and
I want to get the discussion started first so they could actually comment on the direction we're going, rather than just being, coming out cold turkey and making a statement and not having an opportunity to interact with us. That's the advantage we have at design review versus at a planning commission meeting. We don't get the opportunity to interact.
Well, Scott, do you agree that there should be a rhythm and a sort of a...
I like what you guys have been talking about so far.
So maybe they can respond to that idea, and the fact that we see this as an opportunity to really enhance the street. I mean, for one thing, it's a great opportunity for you guys as business owners to have additional outdoor seating, but we don't want to turn it into a hardship. And especially for the retailers, I think there was a big concern. We hear that a lot, that some of the retailers were impacted pretty significantly. And then there's and so maybe then after we hear from them, we can get in kind of to the nuts and bolts of the thing.
Let's go around the room and...
I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity that we had because it definitely brought a new element. As you drive down Del Mar, seeing people that you know and live next to and you're able to wave to them when you're driving by, it brought that kind of feel, that good feeling, that I think San Clemente is all about, and it really showcased, really what we were about. And so not only am I thankful for what it did for our business, but there's also a social aspect and that psychology side of it that I think really played well. You brought up a good point in making it, call it long-term permanent, because breaking those things down, I know Chris did the same thing. As we really did a great job making sure ours was level, it was sturdy, it didn't, shift and turn. So we spent a fair amount of funds in doing that, but also in doing that, you don't want to break it down once or twice a year and then store it and then put it back together, because each time you break it down, in which we did, you ruin part of it. It doesn't just break down and put together like Legos. So if we were to do something like that, I like what you said, because it brought a good point, is if it is going to go for, call it 2 years, that it stays with 2 years. You also brought up a good point as well, in which we learned was we could have built our deck a little better for the drainage, in which we did pretty good on getting the top of it butted up to where we had a nice even platform. But I think in the framework of it, we could have done a lot better to make it to where some of the rainwater, in which we don't get much, but when we do get it, I did notice that I had to get in there and jostle it around a little bit and then get the blowers and so on and so forth. So I definitely agree that structurally we can do some things, given that we already did it, to make it better as well. As far as, and Chris can showcase what they do over at HH a little bit, but in reality what we did is we took a row of tables out of our restaurant and put them on the deck. So we didn't really add additional seats or tables to the restaurant, we merely spaced it out. In which, if anyone's been to that restaurant, when you're in that bar area, there's that row of tables, it's really, really, really tight in there. All we did was took that row of tables and moved it to the deck. So we basically stayed within the same exact seat count, plus or minus 10 or 12 extra tables, or extra seats, because you were able to manipulate a couple extra spots out on that deck a little bit. I also don't think that we need to go, like what you guys were all saying, as large as what we did the first round, and I think it would save a couple of spots, call it 3 spots per restaurant or something like that, or somebody only wanted 2 or 1, and great, whatever the case may be. But I think that 3 spots would probably be enough and suffice for us, because you can get maybe 6, 7 tables out there for that. As far as visual, I do agree that there were some decks that blocked some of the retail spots, or it could, and just the general view from driving down the street at Del Mar and looking at the retail stores or the restaurants. Some of them did block some of that, and I think if we were to bring that down lower and make it that visual appear a little easier and more eye-friendly for everyone, I think that would be a nice adjustment as well. I completely agree with that. There is also a strength a retailer can get when you've got 30, 40, 50 people sitting out in front of your business for an hour and a half. You probably are going to get a little bit of traffic from someone convincing themselves to visit a store rather than just walking by as well. So there's a little plus and minus with having that captive audience also look at your retail store. Because given if they come to, any of the restaurants, they come in, dine, and then leave, the opportunity to capture someone at a store may be a little less than somebody that's sitting there looking at your store for an hour, hour and a half. So there's a give and take, and I think that, if we are given the option to have a temporary, permanent solution, that I think we can address and make everyone happy. Because I know from what we've heard community-wise, the community absolutely loved it.
Very good. Well, Aaron said, well, I've had the privilege to kind of be part of this process since the beginning. So there's been obviously it was brought out in an emergency situation, but a lot was learned in the process. And kind of going on Aaron's last point is we've done surveys at the DBA. We've done with the restaurants, with the retail, the service industry, and there's actually a little bit of misnomer I think that got out there that a lot of the retail that we talked to actually, we're talking about, Aaron talked about, when you sit on the outdoor dining deck, you actually get an appreciation of the retail around you. There was one that was put down there by Brussels, by Brussels, and Mickey's on our board. So Mickey's on the board of the DBA, and so that is a design standard issue that would need to be corrected. Meaning that was
on the wall.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, and this is all done in an emergency situation, so we were never done before. So and so the feedback that we got as far as DBA were a couple things. One, that from the community, overwhelming support. 80-90% of the residents come down there. As far as the environment in the downtown, it also brought the downtown an attraction for all the businesses, which we're very, very much passionate about, and on all sectors, and retail, by the way. Retail, we got a lot of very big support as far as that kind of feedback. So the only feedback we got a little bit on top of that was, as far as other than the Brussels situation, which would have to be addressed, would be that the is just really the standards. And that's understandable. Honestly, we literally came out in the middle of the night, kind of put literally steel out to get to really survive in our restaurant situation. So I think the opportunity is here, and I think that I think what you are saying so far, and Steve, you're right. There is a financial aspect that we need to look at, and I think with good communication between the restaurant sector, which is there, and this committee would be helpful. And also, if you looked at the last city council meeting, there were some comments. I think realistically, and I have no data to support this, but I think realistically, there's restaurants that are going to choose based on their own finances to do it, and some that are not. So the reality is, that can be worked out. But we at the DBA are certainly committed to give you guys data to help you as far as maybe give you a preview of who actually will put the finances out to build the deck, the staffing, and some that are not. And hopefully there can be a solution for long term. So anything you guys want to ask questions, we've been involved at the beginning, but it's been a very successful program in the downtown.
And I think that's a good thing to consider is maybe, Bart, even though we're coming up with some equitable system, some restaurants, they just don't want to use it.
Absolutely.
You don't want to do it, in which case, what do? You trade? You trade your, your opportunity or whatever to someone else, or I don't know how that works, but that's got to play into it. And I don't know what the interest is. Obviously you guys are interested in doing something more permanent or more that looks good, but you know, I guess needs to be considered.
Cecilia or Adam, do either of you want to say anything, or? Okay.
No, I'm a designer, so I'm looking at it from the way the street could look, and I think everything needs to come down lower. I would like to see no big palm trees. I would like the restaurants to have a limit of the number of umbrellas and heaters they're allowed to have, because it just, some of the decks had a lot, and it was just kind of like a yard sale, you know? I mean, you want them, but you can't just have wall-to-wall umbrellas and heaters. It just, and I wouldn't want to see signage on the outside, because the whole idea is to not block the signage on the street. So if you're getting the opportunity to put more signage outside of your deck, you're not only blocking your neighbors, but you're also getting more. It sort of feels like an inequity. And I just, like, if you go to downtown Laguna Beach, not on Forest, but on the other surrounding streets, they have some, and it's all like these really nice modular, these sections of louvered wood and then sections of gridded wire. And then the louvered wood and the wire, and they're all the same. They're all different sizes, but they're all the same. It's beautiful. And there's, you know, planters built within it. I think that would be, my choice would be to have planters built within it, so there's no trees loose on the deck. Everybody has to plant something. Everything's low, so everybody can see. Because the complaints that we got from the retailers, it was the loss of parking and it was the visibility. And that was really the only two things they ever complained about that I ever heard. So I think if you address those two things, then you're gonna have a bunch of happy retailers.
Very good, thank you.
I'm not sure if anyone's been, downtown LA recently, but Spring and Broadway have done the same thing. They've closed off, and they've done this prior to COVID. They have outdoor seating. It's designed, to speed up single lane. I think Del Mar would benefit from that. That doesn't really approach our situation. We're given the opportunity to build a patio on a space that isn't designated parking. It's our property. And now we're apparently being told we have to tear it down. And for us to tear it down, we spent, a lot of money building.
Which restaurant?
Riders Club Cafe.
Okay.
El Camino. For us to tear it down.
I think we're trying to improve the look of it as well, so.
It does. It builds that space was originally a gas station in the 20s. And, we kept the integrity of the design and the property. And we built that patio to the T. I have every photograph and, drawings of how it was built to specs and, for it to be built as it should. It's only 7 inches off the floor. And to be told to tear it down, and especially now that we're going back into masking and outdoor seating again, to be told we have to tear it down and then build it back, just seems to me to be a little bit redundant. It just doesn't make sense. So our issues.
To speak to what you had brought up, that is a concern. It is expensive, but our space is different, and we're going to try
You're
to.
not on Del Mar.
And Del Mar,
Yeah,
we're not in the same category of considerations, really.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand, that I think Del Mar looked pretty good when they did actually have the outdoor seating. Some of it was a bit excessive, so maybe you have to address that, but our situation is completely different. We're not using anyone's, there's no public parking spaces, it's our property. And to have to tear it down now, it's concerning.
Yeah, well, I totally understand.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of them out there. La Siesta, they tented their whole parking lot.
Yeah, But that was, parking. That was parking spaces for the capacity.
And then they leased from adjacent place.
Yeah. That's why I was saying that people ought to be given priority if they're paying money to fulfill the full parking requirement.
Yeah, and I think as what you were saying about Avila's, a lot of the restaurants aren't. Well, some of them may be adding a lot of new tables or seating, but it really does just spread out and then have that outdoor space, which people really enjoy, and we can have that here. So,
we'll lose, like 12 seats that look, onto Catalina, and it's just it's a gas station, that where we built, was a turnaround. It's not wasn't designated, so we already have the amount of required. So I think there's a lot of individual situations that need to be addressed rather than just a block, transparent. That's it. Well,
in Del Mar we'll have all of that, but then there's going to be a lot of other
there's all
specific,
sorts of unique
yes,
situations. I mean, some in shopping centers where they're using parking spaces that the place may be overparked already, so it's not as much of an issue. So there's a lot to consider.
We don't really know how to address it. It shouldn't just be like a blank, situation. It should be sort of by design, by individual circumstance. Otherwise, we're going to lose, our business. We'll lose our business if we don't have, our patio.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
Mark,
Yes.
if I could just say one
Please.
thing. After the meeting, I'll give you my card. I'm the deputy director. Your situation sounds a little bit unique. Most of what we're talking about is putting outdoor seating in areas that are designated for a different use of either city property or private property. You're describing something that might have an avenue for a separate type of approval.
Thank you.
Before the deadline, I'd like to start a conversation.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it would mean so
Yeah,
much
I
to
live
us
near
because for me to have to tear that down and start again is just, it wouldn't make sense.
So is that code enforcement requirement?
Well, yes, it's.
Have you been cited or?
until the end of the month, Jonathan and I.
I think it's 12/31, I think
It's
is.
not enough time for us to get a minor architectural permit.
Yeah, I'm talking
Adam?
Yeah, we'll.
My 2 cents.
Okay, yeah.
I'll give you my information. We'll make sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
This week or early next.
Okay, so Jonathan, we've got the Santa Barbara thing here, and I think Steve was right that some suits us, some doesn't, and it is a bit of a hodgepodge. But if we just talk about Del Mar for a minute and kind of go through this.
Is it that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can be, let's see, Jonathan, is Del Mar such that it's almost impossible to get flush with the sidewalk? The pitch of the street isn't so, the sidewalk's this, how much pitch does that street have?
I think it varies as you work your way down. Like when you got to like our corner, we were able to make it completely flush from the start of the 50 feet to the back of the 50 feet. However, when you're up, where it starts to really drop, I don't know much about that area.
That's up closer to El Camino Real.
Yeah.
We were in Ola Vista, and so we were completely flush. But we also had a patio on Del Mar, and that was pretty flush as well where we were. But I agree with Aaron, it's probably the top.
Because you gotta get some bracing underneath, then you're decking and,
The challenge so more often what I was seeing is that we had, especially with the later decks that were built, they were flush with the curb. However, the deck themselves were likely more than a 2% angle or grade at crossfall. And so, I had experiences a couple of times sitting and sliding a little bit while I was having lunch. So that is the bigger challenge is not just being flush, but is the deck itself level. And that is going to be nearly impossible to achieve at some locations on Del Mar to have the deck itself be level while having flush with curb.
I know that was a request by a lot of people that I'd heard, and if there's a railing along that and there's still a ADA ramp up to it, I don't know if it has to be dead level the whole way across. I mean, it makes it easy for servers, but as long as there's an aisle, I mean, if we go even 12, 14, we went 14 feet even out from the curb, that'd give us at least 5 feet for planters or pots and whatnot. That'd be plenty to get a serving aisle as well as the tables in, I think.
Yeah, I think the boundary that runs parallel with the street is the easy part.
Yeah.
Right? It's the transition from one section to another, especially if you're, starting somewhat level and then you drop off and you want to incorporate your parklet within those two zones. I mean, how do you do that? But, I would lean towards some sort of a raised deck.
That's kind of what.
As opposed to, like it says here, platform surfaces must be constructed with wood. If no platform is constructed, surface materials should not be used. I don't think the deck material is that critical. I think it's the view from the street, right? And the problem is if you do have slopes, you're going to have some sort of a transition threshold, within there. So I think that's why I would suggest we're a little more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'd be great if they did, a raised, modular platform, but nobody's going to be able to afford that. I don't think.
Not until they know it's permanent.
Yeah.
Well, and then you're raising it, and you're blocking the other retailers and signage. The more you raise it,
We're only talking inches.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like flattening it higher side of the site or something.
Well, I think that, there needs to be gaps in it too, right? Because I think part of the problem is some of it was just running for some length,
right?
And you had to go around it to get to the retail space.
Right.
So if we say, 3 spaces maximum without I don't know what you guys are looking at, but 3 parking spaces maximum without a gap, so that you can connect to the retail all along that edge.
Right.
And I have to go all the way around and come back. That would, I think, be received pretty well with the retailers. I agree with the awnings. I mean, how often do you really need a umbrella in San Clemente on Del Mar? I mean, most of it's afternoon and evening.
Yeah, 2 to 4, 2 to 5.
Yeah. That's going to be one of the trickier things, I think, too. Just like the platform, is how do we get shade in there? And if somebody wants to be able to shade their entire patio, how are we going to get that to work?
Well, maybe they don't get to.
Yeah.
Just don't allow. Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility. There's also.
Give and take.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
There's give and take.
Well, I like the, I like the idea of the sort of, Cinzano umbrellas, and they're not massive. They're not huge.
I love the
Cinzano
umbrella.
Or Heineken or whatever. I don't know, to see but if you're limited, let's say per patio, to just a couple of them, and some people get shade and some people don't.
One type or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good.
Can we? I feel like we're just jumping all around. Can we just kind of try and go through this in some kind of organized way?
Well, I think
let's
we
tackle
are.
the topic and get to the bottom of it.
We got to figure out the size of this thing first.
Okay. What size do you propose?
I'm leaning towards a 3 because I looked at that's very easy to at least get 20.
I think that's very fair.
If it's
I think
done
that's
right.
very fair.
It seems to me it should be, but based on frontage, like Avila's, and these two guys probably have the longest frontages. But if there's no retail in the middle of your store, I mean, they could have longer because they have longer frontage.
Which will impact parking drastically.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're okay.
That's put out there. You're taking
Scott,
out
if they're
parking
okay
as
with
well
the
as
3.
adding people.
Well, okay, so if the concern is parking for Avila's is taking way too much parking. Sorry, I'm going to single you out.
Yeah, we have the trolley zone is where we had ours. So it was all red. There was no parking that we took. But I firmly believe that, like what you're saying, 3 is a good number. I think we took, 50 feet? So we technically had, 4.5, 5 parking spots? And I would be completely content with meeting in the middle and doing 3, because I think it's just a give and take, but I also think I think it's advantageous for us to have the outdoor dining. And if it means that it needs to be
For the greater good.
Absolutely.
And there's a whole lot of stuff interwoven in here, and Cecilia knows this, and Adam knows it, that outdoor dining, we've got a whole section on outdoor dining in the zoning ordinance. And it specifically says, 16 is granted by right on your property without providing parking for.
If you have a minimum of 32 indoor
And
seats.
at 31 and below, it's 8
Yes.
8 outdoor dining spaces. So this temporary one, if we're doing something, it's going to have to supersede all that stuff for a time being. And I hope we don't try to change the code, because it shows up in all these documents would have to be revised to accomplish that. It's pervasive throughout the general plan, so forth. So I like that rhythm going on, and it's possible that looking at the charts, and I like if we said, see diagonal, it's going to be about 20 feet from the curb. That's fine. So 14 or 15 feet deep would give plenty of room for standalone traffic planters. So we don't have any K-rail or any of this really temporary looking traffic safety stuff out there. And I think each of those pots, I was looking at them, are somewhere around $350 for one of those
Is it a
traffic protection pots. And if we had a uniform type, maybe the color doesn't always have to be the same, but something uniform that would hide, because you're all going to have different kinds of furniture out there, different kinds of umbrellas, but it may be the pots and the rails are uniform. That would certainly be nice. And on those rails, you can even have the rail top little planters that hang over the rail onto the outside. And they're maybe 30 inches wide, just something to add some color and soften it up.
What about, and I know Scott wants to stay on track here, but what about, tables that can attach to those so that you can sit on the edge?
Depending on look out. You could do that. That'd be a lot nicer now because you're 5 feet back from the traffic.
Right.
So another way to lay the seating
that.
out. And that would be on an individual
You
basis.
saw it to that, yeah. Yeah, I think that would
Remember
work.
to sell it. That's the concept that they were
And people like that. Because then you're sort of people
looking
watching.
out on the menu.
And people like being seen.
So we're not thinking that you can walk out of the street along the edge of these.
No,
you
well, I
still
don't
have to
think-
go, if we're going with 3 spaces and then a gap, then you can sort of circulate in between, I guess.
And you still got the sidewalk, and these can be then fenced in if alcoholic control says, hey, we got to have it with the required fencing and gate. That'd be easily done, because that's all they'd require. Right now, they're just saying the rule is it normally has to be adjacent. Now that you've pulled it away, they're giving you relief on that. I don't know, do you know what the permit is that we require it for outside, would it be a catering permit?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
temporary catering permit.
Temporary catering permit? Okay. Okay, so that's good. So we can look at the Santa Barbara one and kind of go through it, pick and choose.
We're going to excuse ourselves, if that's okay.
Well, thank you for your input, and
Thank you very much.
we'll keep looking after you.
Yeah, thank you. It was really good. Anything. Yeah.
So If we want to call them parklets, that's fine.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
You know, what we see here below that parklet sign is kind of what we got. It's a diagonal parking. It is raised at the sidewalk on the first page. There you go. That picture on the lower left. So they had a little ramp that got up there, nice and uniform. We'd have a little more space on the street side for the planting. That's interesting that they've got some poles up with Tivoli lights or patio lights. What do you think about that, Scott?
Well, one of the things that I thought was inconsistent with these is it talked about basically you couldn't have any electrical across the public sidewalk. So I don't know how they get electrical, but it requires
Looks like
lighting.
it's overhead.
Okay.
But it still crosses the public sidewalk.
It has to at some point.
Even if it's overhead.
Well, unless they
How
have
do we do
battery
those
powered lights.
trees?
or
We do our
something.
Christmas trees.
It's a trip hazard issue.
Right, I
Even
understand.
the curbs over them.
We did,
Creative.
for a while, we did the solar power ones.
There you go. Yeah, they'll last till closing time.
Yeah, and especially on, the downtown, and I know the CIP is going to address that, but lighting is really important. I mean, we're on Ola Vista and Del Mar, there's just a lot of darkness that happens, so lighting is important for the restaurants to at night. It just is.
Yeah,
Not only
overcast.
for what you see it as dining, but it's also, I feel personally, that as you're driving down Del Mar, it's just that extra, hey, there's something here.
Right.
Because, you don't want something tragic to happen as well.
Well, so Adam, what you're saying is there's no way to get power, because even if you use solar.
There is probably a solution. What I would recommend is that the design review subcommittee weigh in on what they'd like to see. If there's design features that require power, staff can talk to Public Works and Utilities and identify potential ways to provide that power.
Well, one of the things that I personally really would not like to see is just, light poles and overhead lights and just this mishmash of things. I like the image.
The street trees on Del Mar have outlets in them, and they use them once a year for the, they call it the festoon lighting of the winter holiday. So there is power that's on the street side of the sidewalk, and there could be some other opportunities here. I think there's probably going to be some good opportunities for the city to work with the businesses to provide some of the features necessary to really produce good outdoor dining.
Okay, we got to be able to light the tabletop somehow.
Well, I think the tabletop lighting could be from a solar source, but the thing that I liked about that one image that you showed me was, this had the heaters, one on each end. Right?
Yeah.
And then maybe you just have.
I hate using my phone at meetings.
Yeah, go ahead.
These are actually the heaters on both ends of it, and that's a 24-foot wide
I have it up on the screen too.
space.
These
Oh,
are
thank
more
you.
Permanent.
There we go.
Yeah.
So that's a nice look. It's very clean, but you could have a raised platform, and then those planters could be raised.
They could be on
along
the platform. You're right.
And then you're golden, I think. And that looks like it's roughly 3 spaces.
I mean,
maybe.
and that one's already got a gate and all that would meet Alcoholic Control Board's requirements.
Yeah, it's clean.
Now, I don't think you'd want to pay for the metal railings at this point in time. But certainly a wood railing doing the same thing would work.
Well, what I was suggesting is that the planters are the barriers.
Okay.
So that you don't have all these different wood and wrought iron and, just all these different kinds of fences.
I just think that could get expensive if you have to have 100% planter along, your perimeter, at a minimum on the street side even.
Yeah, but it's a rare opportunity to really set the pace, for Del Mar, I think, with the sort of a rhythm. You can get, there's so many good succulents. Succulents are overused, but, drought tolerant planter materials. I don't know, you mentioned some planter that's $300.
Oh, I was looking, yeah, they're the pots that they do at the, football games or whatever, where they don't want traffic going down a particular street. They stick them out there, they're planted, and they look pretty good. And they provide protection for the people from the cars.
They only have to be 18 inches wide or something like that.
These were actually probably 30-inch round. But they have rectangular ones too.
Yeah, I would like to avoid, some of them are round, some of them are rectangular, some of them are
So
this
we need to
size.
research that and
Some
find
are
out
that
what's
height.
available and economical and.
Even if you made, if you had these things fabricated out of wood and you wrapped them in zinc, and they were a certain height that we sort of dictated, and you could have some longer, but there's the same width. I think that would really establish a rhythm down the street. And we're not talking about a ton of money because it's just not less than 30 feet, right? It's 27 feet. And so you've got 6 planters, they're
something like that.
Yeah. 3.5 feet each, something like that. And that's something you could, if you had to move it, you could put it on wheels, for instance, and lock them. I don't know, that might be a little tough, but if you had to move it, you could continue to use it in other locations.
Even here, they used bollards to
Yeah,
protect the cars.
those are expensive, though. I know.
Oh no, but we can't dig into the street.
Right.
But if you had the pots planted that far apart or whatever, to give the same kind of protection, because I know safety was an issue, and they're getting 2 umbrellas for 20.
That's probably that's close to 30 feet, I would think.
It's 26 when I pasted it off today.
Okay.
By 10. It's only 10 deep.
Mm-hmm. 10
and
feet. You mean 10 feet clear inside
Yes,
the?
correct.
Which, if you had a planter, that has some width, you'd end up with maybe 10 or 12 feet on the inside.
Yeah.
Well, so that works.
Okay.
The railing was important to us as well because people with kids and dogs, we wanted to make sure that nobody could get from the table to the street as well.
Well, I think that the falling hazard also,
Absolutely.
if it's raised up from the street,
Yep.
you gotta have it.
Yep.
So this site selection deal, I think we can disregard all the different colors of curb at this point. Now, Jonathan, are you the one that's going to be coordinating this, or is it going to be in planning, or?
Jonathan's taking the lead. There are multiple aspects of this project.
Oh, are there ever?
Between design review, planning commission, city council, the economic impacts, coordination with other city departments necessary to do this, I'm happy to have Jonathan take the lead.
I'm sure he's happy to do it.
Yeah.
We know the product will be good. That's the important thing.
Okay, so size, we agree that the 6 feet, it doesn't need to be that narrow in our, this is on the second page. In our situation, it can be,
Well, I think we should set aside, try to recommend 10 to 12 feet.
If you don't, really, if we are comfortable referencing the 3 parking spot standard, as I, with the rare instances where we do have parallel parking, that still provides a size parameter. where, we'd be looking at 9 by 19
Do
as
we
the
have a
standard.
case like that on Del Mar?
Yeah, but with diagonal parking, it's not as deep as the full depth.
Correct.
Deeper.
Not perpendicular to the curb.
It's the same. I think
It's about 21 foot or whatever, 21 foot for a diagonal 30 degree or whatnot, because the second one, your curb sticks out in reality. You don't park parallel to the curb. So your left front wheel is going to be.
Oh, I see, because your
further back.
car's on the diagonal.
Yeah. That's an anomaly.
It's at least
diagonal
20.
parking.
Yeah, it's at least 20.
So yeah, varying widths up to might be the way to do it.
Because so the Pure Bowl obviously would be parallel parking,
Which would be the 6 foot.
The Avila's scenario would be curb adjacent. So there's less, but there are contexts where that would be the case. So then, if we set a 3 parking space limit, then that tells me 3 times 19, like that's your lineal foot limit if you're curb adjacent. And there could be other limitations, like obviously there can be competing standards, but that can translate.
I think that's too long.
3
parallel spaces, is that what you're saying?
3 for parallel?
Oh, that'd be 24, 48, that's 60 feet.
Yeah, you can't, I don't think we can do that. I mean, I think for parallel, we have to drop it to 2 maximum.
Yeah.
And that'd be 2 by 8, excuse me, yeah, that'd be 40, what is it, 24
it's
feet?
20,
for
I think, or
parallel?
22 for parallel.
22 then.
So it's like 44 feet. That's plenty.
That'd
Even
be
if it's only
400,
6 feet.
almost 500 square feet.
Yeah, and then those are only 6 feet deep.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling up real quickly what just Logala down by the Pier Bowl has a good site plan as an example to see what their length was. Okay, so they are at 58 feet currently, is the Logolette, which is their frontage, so they're not extended beyond their frontage, but it is 58 currently, just as a frame of reference for one of the ones that...
So 2 stalls, that's not 3.
It's kind of between 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's 2.5.
Well, do we want to...
I think that's too
I'm
long.
thinking 2 is plenty, because if you take a half a stall, you've really taken 3 then.
Right.
And if we keep it to 2, we keep some resemblance of parking.
I mean, what are you saying, Johnson? You have to go in and take patio away from them, or?
No, it just is, so this is that site plan, just for frame of reference only while we're talking about this, so that's the 58
So they
feet.
had...
And this kind of shows, again, we don't have the same constraint if you need to show 6 foot separation that we were doing initially.
How much distance they put? Oh, that's with legal separation, the 6 foot.
Correct, yeah.
Which we aren't required to do at this point.
We're not. So, I mean, the Pier Bowl is also an interesting context because we have a stretch where it is all restaurants, and so there's not really a need for a break. We have the crosswalks are maintained, but we could think of other things.
You can say 2 and additional if reviewed, which gives you the opportunity in certain situations to adapt.
Like an exception process if they want. Okay.
Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Portable heaters and lightings are permitted. However, these please ensure proper clearance for trees and umbrellas. I sure liked those ones that weren't the pole heaters.
Well, those are attached to a pole, though, right?
But they're low. The nice part is they aren't sticking up 8 feet or 7 feet, whatever those things are.
So those have a propane, I assume. And
can you go back to the picture of the... See, they're at 7 feet, it looks like.
Yeah, but where's the...
They may be using natural gas on that one.
Yeah, it's a natural gas.
And do you have natural gas out there? I don't think you do.
No, they're going to have a... well, There might be a canister down below, but I don't see it.
Yeah, try by
I don't,
Cupola.
I guess I'm gonna.
Yeah.
No, it's just.
On
So they just put a wall mount heater on a pole and plumbed it.
Looks like.
There's something down there below.
It just looks like a base of some sort.
That.
There's a chair back.
It's amazing how small it was to get 20 seats in there. Worked out
these
pretty well.
infrared heaters are usually natural gas.
Yeah, but you guys use propane right now, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So, Mark, you don't think they should be allowed to have the hat heaters? or whatever? I mean, I
I'd
don't think-
certainly prefer not to. I mean,
But is that realistic? I mean,
I'd have to research it more. I think
if we're only limiting the number, let's say that, is 2 of them adequate for,
Generally
Three-
speaking, to heat a table, you could use 1 heater for 2 tables because you just park them in between the 2
okay, so
tables.
4 tables there, two would do it.
yeah, so let's say we limit it to 2 of the hat, I don't know what you call those.
Yeah, just
propane.
1 for 2 tables is fine.
Okay.
It's adequate. You agree?
Yeah, I do.
And those are readily available.
Yeah, you know, we're moving around, you know how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be, the mobility,
Yep.
if you
Yeah,
guys. know
gotta
that,
put it over close to mom.
Exactly. Exactly. Actually, I'll go sit inside if it's that cold. If it's that cold. I like the overhead lighting elements discarded. Removability, that's good. Storm flow, yes, we got to take care of that.
Wait, so I thought there was support for overhead lighting, for like patio lighting. Is that not the case?
No, I don't think we'd rather see it, mounted to
Like railing.
either railing or a pole or something, so you don't, I don't like those, like, what do they call them, Tivoli?
Tivoli lights or party lights, I mean, it totally goes against the dark skies, having
It's a-
an
it's
exposed
all-
bulb out there.
Yeah, it's a glare field, and it ends up looking, they start to sag, it just doesn't, I don't think it looks good at all. So
So
if we can get
preference for
some-
table lighting or some kind of integrated lighting on the
I think
barrier.
those bollards on this particular one actually have lights in them.
Those are light bollards,
Yeah.
not traffic safety.
But aren't there lights mounted to those poles as well? Did you say that?
Could be.
I don't think so.
No. But you could, and you get more benefit if they're shielded,
But
because then
they
the bollards
don't-
don't give you much light.
I think what's said here, overhead lighting elements are discouraged.
Oh, for Sam.
Doesn't say
Prohibited.
I think the city would want a safety valve
Mhm.
to address safety issues, because one of the aspects of night dining is providing hot food to the patrons and a safe.
Can we say that these Tivoli lights are not allowed? And then you have
or
to-
bare bulbs or something like that.
Another thing I have seen in the past is, I mean, I know that there's some opposition to umbrellas too, but I have seen interior lighting on umbrellas where then
Which
it's
isn't bad.
underneath the
The
umbrella.
only problem with that is you can't light the heaters then because the heaters get burned by, or the
umbrellas get
by
burned,
the
that's
heat.
good.
There you go.
Because you usually
There you
remove
go.
one and bring the other.
Correct.
I think that one needs some study. The lighting options.
Okay.
But I think we should lean towards a pole mounted.
Something like that, yeah.
Because then it'll be the same, so you can get that rhythm. And if you
Yeah.
only have 2
Yeah.
per parklet, and they, once the bollards don't give you enough spread of light. But if it's mounted on a pole and we figure out some sort of shield, so it's not just like a bare glare field,
But
I think that would be
more of a floodlight type of fixture as opposed to street
yeah, but
lighting.
shielded so you don't look right into
So
the
it's
light
direct,
source.
so it's not shining into path or drivers and.
Right.
I mean, if it was out on the street element going back towards the sidewalk,
Well, if these poles here had lights,
I believe they
I
did.
think it would work.
Okay. Research that a little bit.
Yeah, and just to interject again, staff would love to hear as much direction from the designer of the subcommittee as possible. This is a unique project because the city is the applicant, but we really have a whole lot of applicants that we're representing.
Yep.
So we'd love to know what the hierarchy of design wants from the design review subcommittee would be, so that staff can go back, work with the businesses, when we come back to the planning commission, provide the recommendation, and hopefully find a solution that works with the recommendations of the design review subcommittee. And if there are some issues, hopefully have a number of alternatives. So if there's a pecking order in terms of the type of lighting you'd like to see, we'd love to know what number 1 is, what number 2 is, what number 3 is.
Okay.
And it'll just cut down on some of the time in the planning commission meeting.
So are you saying that you want to see like images of, hey, this
No,
is
I mean, you can just tell us.
Okay.
Description.
I mean, that's kind of what we're-
Lighting is preferred.
Yeah, we've talked about.
Secondary is shielded overhead or something.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
and to the extent that you can, those types of comments help us.
Thank you for your
help us
input.
formulate our presentations in the future.
Okay. So that's kind of what we're doing. Right?
No, absolutely. Sorry,
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure it's
So keep
clear
on,
that
is what you're saying?
Well, but we're kind of throwing out ideas. He wants us to be super specific on preferred is tabletop.
I can't be specific at this point. I got to research it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think we got
Give
good.
the right answer.
I think we're getting good direction.
To
Right
the
now.
extent that you can, it's nice.
So what we're doing right now is helpful, I assume, right? Is that what we're supposed to be doing?
We're giving direction. I'm going to research lights a little bit and see.
And I'll
because I
research
didn't
the plan.
focus on that.
So
I was looking at the layout of them.
Are we?
Yeah,
Are we comfortable? I'm perfectly comfortable. Like deferring to you guys, and if you guys do some more research and then communicate with Adam after the fact, as the recommendation of the committee. So it doesn't, right? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I mean,
We don't want to have to
we're
go
gonna
back to
work
the design
on
review
this.
committee.
Yeah, what I want to avoid is having a number of ideas out there and then having staff find one option that's really good, spend some time dealing with that, but that's really not the most preferred option.
Yeah, you want a couple of alternatives.
Yeah, and if there's one that's just that's very clearly supported in terms of its design over others, it's always nice to know.
Yeah. Oh, if I could add some context. So your discussion of the consistent street flow was great, and I think that is a great balance of even what council had mentioned of like allowing some flexibility but some continuity. I think that achieves that. And then I can also do some of that research of like, okay, what's a planter? I'll talk to our public works. How far apart do we need to space these planters? What's the cheapest way that we can accomplish that? And bring some of that back to you with, like a sample cross section of planter, patio. This is what the cost would be associated with that, just as an example. So I don't mind doing some of that additional legwork.
That's great. Yeah.
So you giving me that context of this is what we're envisioning, I can run with those things.
I guess my question is, do you guys envision bringing this back to this body? Or no, the next time we see it's going to be planning commission?
I can, but I would say that my preference on coming back would be with if there are very, very targeted questions that then I research and bring back detail on those specific elements, as opposed to coming back with a general new business item on design.
Yeah, I think we're setting pretty clear direction here. So
I
far.
mean, you can see what we're going through here and trying to do it with 7 people.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we have the answers pretty much in hand before we do that.
Exactly.
And Jonathan, just for clarification, what's the timing that you're looking to get to planning commission, whether this item is brought back to the design review subcommittee or not?
I mean, I'd love to go to the, I imagine your first meeting in January is canceled, the January 5th.
The first one, yeah. Actually, if this is a new business item, we can put it on that agenda, but no public hearings would be.
Okay. I wasn't planning on the 5th. It was more just to see. The 19th is probably the soonest I would.
Isn't it March the drop dead date?
March is the drop dead date. So if we do by January 19th, that still gives me time to come back to Planning Commission again, one of the 2 meetings in February, and then go to council after that. So that's my projected timeline.
Okay.
So Merry Christmas, everybody's doing research.
Well, actually, I'm out and about, so I can be looking at all
Taking
sorts of
photos.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. Insurance that's not our problem here. Carpets are temporary, that's a given at this point. Although one council member said, well, they might become permanent, but probably not in this exact format. Winterization guidelines.
So it talked a lot about tents and canopies, and I don't think any of that stuff is appropriate.
And I'm thinking we're trying to get this ready for the summer months, and that could follow. We had to do it before the winter shows up.
I like the idea of just using umbrellas.
Market umbrellas only?
Yeah, don't allow any overhead canopies or
I
agree.
Would you like to set a limit to that as well, similar to the heaters?
Although we're just talking about Del Mar, right? I mean,
at this
point.
Primarily, but we're gonna extrapolate from, that's gonna be the focus of these guidelines, but we probably will extrapolate that to standards for private areas as well.
Because you got south of Nick's and Vine. I mean, a lot of those other restaurants have the tents, and those were pretty nice, especially during the pandemic thing.
I guess I'm thinking, I'm thinking Del Mar, but other.
We can certainly limit it on Del Mar, I think.
I think we should.
Yeah.
If the design review subcommittee is okay with some situations where it may work, staff could always look at a way to differentiate or provide an avenue for additional review for items that are not as straightforward as what the parklet guidelines present.
It should be written that way. Okay. Because this is a temporary thing. I mean, before the winter comes, you're looking at 5 months of having it in place. So,
and honestly, I think a lot of these things can apply both ways. We have parking lots that have been using this, but those parking lots still have paths of travel that are elevated. So, I think that we could still look at keeping flush with the primary path of travel, and even stating it that way. So, if the path of travel is flush with the parking area, then maybe there is some differentiation. But I think we would look to incorporate as much of these Del Mar elements as possible into private considerations.
And I don't think we need to address the ADA issues. That's a given. Building department will do that.
I would say one comment or one question on that is there has been some talk or some interest in potential relocation of ADA on Del Mar. So when we have
at the curb,
so when we have a situation where there's a restaurant and they don't have the opportunity of going out currently because there's an ADA spot, potentially allowing them to do that, but then replace that ADA spot by creating a ramp at another location.
We can certainly do that, because I looked at one up in New York. They actually put the dining on the sidewalk, and they built a temporary sidewalk outside of it.
Okay.
So it beat the liquor law issues, because it was adjacent to the property, and they built a sidewalk out there. But they have wider sidewalks. I mean, what do we have, 6-7 feet?
Yeah, very nice.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty minimal.
And then there's all sorts of stuff in there, trees and power boxes, and
bike racks.
Well, bike racks we can relocate, but if we don't have to, we don't want to. Okay. So yes, I would say that's why I don't know if we need to address them. If there's one in front of their place and it can be relocated with a temporary ramp till the winter, I wouldn't be that opposed to it. I think it would meet the ADA law.
Yep.
That's because that's where ADA things are enforced. Of course.
We would be talking about materials that are consistent with whatever the overall design is.
We're getting this on the yellow page here.
Okay.
So are we okay with tents and canopies on non-Del Mar properties?
Potentially, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like La Siesta, they did it in their own parking lot. There's no business behind them. It doesn't block anybody. Who else had one?
The Vine had a pretty significant one, and it was pretty well contained. I mean, it seemed to work pretty well. And I think
I don't know if Schwack's had one.
They did for a while.
And south of Nix, I think they've taken that down, but they had a.
I would just specify on that, no like consecutive 10 by 10 pop-ups. That's something.
I like that. Yeah,
right.
That's a good idea. Poster, yeah, absolutely. Because it's going to block somebody's signs, some of the retailers.
And it looks more flea market.
Now, the sketches here showing what examples of appropriate enclosure design.
Well, we don't want any overhead, so that one's out.
Yeah, cross that one out for sure.
On the far right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And even I think we can stick to a standard size of umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't really like the ropes.
On the left?
Bottom left image?
Yeah, so I think it's sort of a combination of the middle one.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't provide any protection anyway.
Right. So
I like the one on the right. Those are the kind of planters I was saying but maybe not that many. You put them out there, you provide the traffic protection.
Right, yeah, no, I think if you can even link those together.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It kind of goes without saying, but the plants have to be maintained.
And Adam will enforce that.
Good.
Yeah, the middle one and the right one are good solutions.
So, yeah, this one and then these two.
Yep. And these pots you see on the next page, that's what I was envisioning for barrier. And they have it, there's a little rhythm going on here. I don't like this tall green section.
I think there's very little rhythm in that.
Well,
Talking about that one's
I'm
out.
saying that needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
And all the
But
very
I don't really like the terracotta,
okay,
pots
cool.
like that. I mean, I think if we can go with a certain material and or color and a consistent height.
Yeah, there's the rectangular one.
Yeah, something like that, but that's got a massive
bush on there.
But a consistent height and width, I think would be great. And then the gaps could vary somewhat.
And if we can find one that's prefabricated, those are the round ones.
It's 2 feet tall. What are your thoughts on height? So quick sidetrack. The outlets had some interesting bollards that they used for a while, but they were not tall enough. It may not be an issue because people pulled in and they weren't tall enough that people could see them well over their hoods. So then they had a bunch of people beaching their cars onto the bollards. So here we don't have cars parking directly in, but is there a height that we would want them for visibility? And then I'll dive into types and bring that back.
Well, what's going to come up is if there's a platform that...
Oh, the one under the pot?
Yeah.
You extend it down under it?
I mean, I would think it'd be nice to have at least 30 inches.
That's the number I was thinking.
Okay.
For starters, that's an easy one to change if we have to.
It would be awesome if we could find, one preferably for consistency, but like 1 or 2 options maybe where hey, this is the pot. It's a good value online.
I'm curious if
we
we
like it.
up on La Pata, the traffic safety group. I wonder if they deal in these things, these pots.
They don't. There's they are all plastic.
Strips or
radiators and all that.
Which so Adam had mentioned before, like we've been I pulled this up actually. So we've tried to make things available. This is this is a traffic device, and most of their things are of this vein. And so we have these, but we don't have K-rails This is our option to like provide at no cost to the restaurants for a traffic rated item on
But
street.
we don't even want them.
No,
Right, so there would either have to be some significant
that's why we're pulling it back from the traffic.
Yeah. Or we would have to, yes, put the burden on to the restaurants to provide these.
I mean,
Yeah, that's not a solution I'd go for.
No, yeah, those are not allowed.
You don't want to sign that, sign that resolution. Mark.
Don't even leave my fingerprints on it. Okay, so I will.
What about, this says plastic or vinyl furniture prohibited.
What did you guys use?
We use the inside furniture. So we just took literally our inside furniture and brought it out.
But it's, what is it? It's steel?
Oh, it's all wood.
Oh, it's all wood, okay.
Did you leave it out or bring it in every night?
We originally started bringing it in every night, and then towards the end, we just covered it.
Got it.
And then just roped the bottom of it.
And I would like to make sure we don't block these spaces too much, where we're creating a hiding space at night. You know, we gotta make these decks visible so nobody's sleeping in the parklets.
We definitely would have to look at the going long term, the furniture being different, because we definitely beat the furniture up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being that it should be indoors. And some of that wood didn't do as well as it should in the sun. And
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it's heavy gauge aluminum, you know, because it's lightweight enough, but it's pretty.
And it doesn't blow around.
Yeah.
Or iron is used.
We do have some outdoor furniture in the back if you wanted to check it out, see what that type of material looks like, because that's been there for years and years. It's almost like a melamine.
Stuff you have in the back patio?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's held up pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, we keep saying wood. I'm not opposed to something like a hardy board or
Yeah, if it looks
Trek
good.
or whatever. I mean, it looks like wood, but boy, it's durable. A little more expensive, but you wouldn't have to paint it, and it's
Okay.
Let's see. On the aesthetics guideline page, I don't see a number here. We've got lighting again, which I agree with. Where lighting is used, it should be placed at a low level in planting or along barrier fencing. Overhead lighting is discouraged. Whole lighting should be white, and we should probably say
Screen
temperature or whatever.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so we're not getting yellow light, white light.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So what temperature do we want? 3,500?
That's,
3,500.
yeah, that's pretty much the go-to. And discouraged pop-up tents, overhead elements, outdoor carpeting, gas lattice, plaster vinyl fence, picket fencing. Hinged metal pet enclosures, what's that? Okay.
Dog houses.
Okay.
Put your mascot in there. What about these colors? I mean, iron color, it's pretty much black, I guess, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, here, sorry. The printer may not catch the
Oh, it's
Oh, there are some
differentiation. There's a
Oh,
slight.
yeah, I guess I can't see.
Yeah.
They're all pretty dark, though.
Yeah, they are pretty dark.
So it's dark bronze. I mean, those colors are fine, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in our palette. I mean, the bright orange is not on the, well, we just scratch awnings, just umbrellas.
And what is trim and details? Is that like seating and?
It might be like a handrail on top of the pickets, or I don't know.
That's a lot of colors. But
Yeah, I don't think we need that many.
I mean, what do we use in trim?
So they have specific color guidelines for their architectural standards. They just cut and pasted.
Oh.
So this was a quick fix.
Yeah, I don't know that we need a trim color.
I'm just, the skirt around the deck,
All right. And then what about the
Maybe
umbrellas?
something.
That's a lot of colors for the umbrellas too.
What about white?
White gets pretty dirty.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of, what do we use at that ice cream
Handles?
place? We talked about colors on that, and it wasn't burgundy, but it's kind of,
Yeah, I think we should limit it to more muted colors. I mean, they get some pretty bright colors in here.
Yeah, and if I may offer a suggestion, it might be easier just to say what you generally want to see or don't want to see, similar to our own design guidelines, which discourage the use of bright colors, for example, rather than laying out a specific color
cut
palette.
and paste that, right?
That's a good idea.
No bright colors.
There's another thing, and I didn't think of this earlier. The city used to have, and if they still don't, if they still do, I apologize, a grant program for the awnings in downtown. So, like the cellar,
Boy, I haven't heard about
where
that.
the Rocket Fizz was, all of those, they came through, and there was a partial grant program, but we
To
gave
make them more uniform?
Yeah, we had a color palette, and so there were some like light browns, black,
If you can find it.
those kinds of colors, and that would create consistency because those were the colors that created the newest awnings.
That should be on there. I like it.
We'll provide that as an option if we can find a copy of that.
I like that.
Okay.
So one more question, quick, that would be a good design review question. The topic of signage came up before. Is there any interest in allowance of any form of signage? And if not, maybe one thing that I might advocate for is at least an allowance of some form of like a stanchion menu type of a sign at the entry to the patios. I think that could be helpful for the public generally. So any quick hit thoughts on signage?
I prefer not to have it. I don't know about you guys, but that's where you kind of
You
lose.
had a sign going west on
Yeah, we had
Del Mar.
yeah.
It was on the fence
on
or
the
wall.
fence, yeah. And margaritas to go. That was when they first came out with the margaritas and things like that she could do to go.
And
So it's like a menu board? or-
No, it was just said
Yeah.
margaritas to go only.
Like
Quick
happy hour.
clarification too, we were lax with signage over the past year, and that's no longer going to be the case either. So the temporary banner signs, etc., would not be a part of this. That was written into the initial council ordinance that we're going to let people, because there were so many of those quick changes, like are they open or not? Are they serving to-go drinks? But that's not going to be a part of this moving forward.
And the other thing to keep in mind for all this, and I like the idea that we space these like every 3 or whatever, but you guys identified a like Grubhub pickup or whatever parking space
Yeah, on the side
adjacent to
on
them.
the side of Old Vista.
How's that justified?
You know, I would need to look into that. It's a difficult thing for a business to identify who or what can use a
Public parking space,
Yeah.
We did, our public works department did do that for a while. Again, this was actually kind of right before the outdoor dining started, where we designated a number of limited term parking spaces. We also did that with the post office when there were complaints about those being removed. We added a couple of limited term, but we wouldn't designate that as for one business use only or one third party provider only. But that is an option. I think that's better for the planning commission to weigh in on, like, do we want to add some more of those? Because there are some businesses that are still interested in that. But it would be more of a 20-minute limit, same as the post office. Applies to anyone, but this parking spot.
I don't think it is involved in this issue, but it's something that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
Well, back to the signage. What are you talking about?
It's shutting down. So, one, we had a number of businesses that applied signage to the edge of their barricade. So, is that something that the design review board is interested in allowing to continue? Two, there was, so they referenced this before, Mickey's had wanted, she said, that outdoor dining area partially blocks or fully blocks my business. I would like for them to put signage for my business onto their space as a condition of them being in front of my business. So those are the two signage questions that I've gotten.
That's an interesting.
Well, those are great questions. Have we addressed that these parking spaces can't go in front of someone else's business?
But eliminated to 3, I think we have.
Possibly. So just let's, if we can jump into this one case study, because actually it's probably
go right ahead.
Worth our time on this one business.
Oh, we got that on our map too. That's in the previous.
Yeah, so the map at the end of your attachments will also show that, and you'll be able to see from that the potential challenge. So we talked about, in this case, they do have, the 2 spaces here, but their frontage is this planter and this walkway, and then this alley. So Brussels, under the guidelines of no more than 3 parking spaces, and if we set a limitation of you can't have any dining area beyond your frontage, we would just tell them, sorry, you can't apply. Which is fine if that's the direction we want to go, but this is one of the challenges we came across where they were very interested in participating. They have 2 spaces, but they had to shift down, and we got complaints from these businesses about signage.
Well, for one thing, that perpendicular wall is a problem.
And I'm hearing from everyone that there's not an interest in that.
No, it's got to be very transparent as much as possible. Other than right at the edge, outside edge.
Well, did they have any parking spaces in front of them?
No.
No. Now, one thing the Design Review Subcommittee could consider is, if this wasn't for outdoor dining, there would be parking there. And if there was a way for a business to, in a situation like Brussels Bistro, to occupy a parking space, which parking spaces are really for everybody, not just for the businesses. But if they could provide that outdoor dining in a way that wouldn't cover any more of a business than a vehicle parked in front of it, that's something staff could look into as well. And I'm bringing that up because there's somewhat of an equity issue here. Everything's location, and so there's always an argument for it. But if that's something that the Design Review Subcommittee would be interested in, staff would be able to look into.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Well, maybe what we could do is say, like in a case like this, okay, if they have no frontage, they can get up to 2 spaces and no umbrellas allowed or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because the umbrellas do.
That's what bothers her.
And
that wall was a real.
If somebody came in here with 2 Sprinter vans, you're not seeing anything.
True.
There's always a universe where there's exceptions.
But there's 2 parking spaces.
But there are 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, maybe what we would
Plus,
say is,
those vans move.
in a case like that, in a case like this, if they don't have frontage, they can have up to 2 spaces, no umbrellas, and they need to put a sign for the business that they're blocking out on their perimeter.
I mean, that's probably a good approach, but then I think there needs to be some continuity in the signage as well. So we don't just see banners and, logos and, whatever.
Well, everyone's got a different logo and font. I mean, you could have generic banner size.
Well, maybe it's a
2
size.
by 3, and they can have and it's a white background, and then they can have their kind of font and logo or whatever.
But those signs only get to go there if they're blocked.
If that parklet is in front of their thing. I honestly think that we're not going to have that many cases of this.
No, I don't think so.
2 or 3 maybe. At the
And if you
most.
took that wall down, that would make a big difference.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think in this case it was mostly that wall is what was causing it, right, John?
It's both, and I'm glad we're having this. You can appreciate the challenge because either way you pick a side, and either way I had someone upset with me. So there's no a
Can
zero
you
sum
scan to
game.
the right a little bit? So what in a case like this if the city just said, okay, you can use the little parklet?
We did allow that briefly. The Historic Society was not a fan of that and did comment a few times.
It's
So
temporary.
In this case, they really could have gone to the right, to the other side, and gotten that one space plus that kind of diagonal. And
Well,
there'd be
So this is an alley access, so
Oh.
we have to leave that open.
Yeah, see, I'm thinking that might be a case where, I mean, I'm a Historic Society fan, but
Yeah, I agree. That would be a good.
just let them use that, then put a couple tables in there and you're done.
Well, and then you leave some visibility in front of the
Yeah.
retailer because you're only going maybe one space additional there. So the 3 spaces is our maximum, but in some cases it might just be 2.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, we've got to have some flexibility for staff to make judgment calls.
Very, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
And
so
if there's ever a need for additional review, staff would love the input, just putting a feel out there for the planning commission. We'd love to know where the line in the sand is between your comfort for a staff decision or a public hearing. Or something, I'll say, something above staff. That's always nice to know.
Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know how we make the decision, kind of based on your perception of how much they're going to complain.
No, but if you're interested, if there's an interest for that, staff can put some thoughts together on it and provide some.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we'll just review it.
And I mean, maybe one way to handle that could be that that it's still administrative, but it requires review by design review, which helps cut down on time because then we don't have to do a public notice. We could require within that, in those cases, you must notify your neighbor of the design review meeting, and the date, et cetera, so that those 2 parties can come in and hash that out here. But then we don't have to do the 2-week additional time frame to have noticing.
Well, it could be staff review and then appealable to design review or full planning commission.
Yeah, that could be an option too. So, and maybe that's something you can think through, and we can delineate a little bit more clearly with the planning commission if there are certain thresholds that we want to push that way. Okay. I mean, I have a good amount to work with. Are there any?
And I'm going to get back with you. I'm going to look at, let's see, what was I going to look at? Lighting. I'm going to look at lighting. I'm going to look at pots.
That's what I'm looking at.
The safety planters.
What about heating? Are you doing anything with heating?
Yes, I think that's on that chart. Or what, where to go?
Well, I think we were going to limit the number and allow those hat-type heaters.
Right now, yeah. Oh, and I was going to look at the fencing too. Just
one thing that
feel free to email me stuff that you're looking at.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I support whatever you guys come up with.
Go ahead.
Although I do think we should
I got
allow, the hat types are kind of ubiquitous and everyone's got them and can get them, and you don't want to make it
That's one to
excessively
use.
difficult.
I prefer a different.
Write down your business one.
stuff.
Yeah.
So you can get it because you probably don't even check the
I would like to
city
see,
one.
Not that often.
like, we've talked a lot about rhythm and uniformity on Del Mar, but when there's a standalone guy somewhere, I don't perceive that he needs to be as uniform as Del Mar. Like the Writers Club, I mean, he's out in no man's land.
Oh, yeah.
We can, to me,
Down
space,
or
whatever,
Molly- Molly Bloom's
the
down there.
materials, it doesn't have to be consistent with what's going on in Del Mar.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
Well, they're out of the architectural overlay also, so when they are.
If they are.
Not
If
the
Writers
ones on-
is.
Not the ones on Camino necessarily, but other ones are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, one of the things that has come up from at least one council member is a concern of in the private parking areas when there was a barricade that sometimes people would park parallel to that. So, you know, we might throw in some specific standards that apply to private areas and include some of those things that have popped up as, you
And
know,
they don't even have to build a deck. I mean, they can go right on the pavement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they put the artificial turf down over at the Vine for their big tent.
I'm trying to think, but they might have. They might have. Yeah.
Pretty sure they did. I mean, it was a pretty nice tent facility.
Yeah. So if you don't mind even contributing some of your opinions after you do some of that research, then what I could do is...
that's the whole idea for doing it.
Then I'll draft a San Clemente version of what the Santa Barbara one is, keeping things that we wanted to keep and making some changes. And then two options. I can bring that back to Planning Commission. I also don't mind coming back to a January meeting of the design review.
But I think it would be good just to prepare it for...
Yeah, I think when it goes to Planning Commission, it needs to be pretty well figured out.
It needs to be pretty tight.
Okay, so let's plan on that then. And maybe even, I don't know if we have anything scheduled for the January meeting or if it may make sense to have a special meeting where this is just the standalone topic.
Yeah, and the next DRC meeting is January 12th.
12th, okay.
Yeah, so it's second.
Does it still work with your schedule?
So I yes and no. Like I'd be able to, we'd be able to consolidate thoughts, but the Planning Commission meeting would already be noticed by that point, and we would probably already have, the agenda report ready to go.
Let's keep it open to be on that one.
Okay.
And anything I find, I'll email you guys.
Okay.
And if you have an objection to it, get back to me because I'm going to copy Jonathan and Adam on them also. And just say yay or nay.
Yeah, and you can just schedule for the planning commission, and then heaven forbid we, continue the item or something, but at least it's there.
Yeah.
As a placeholder.
Sure.
Except we have our drop dead.
So Adam and Stephanie and I can coordinate potentially on, what makes sense after I consolidate your thoughts into a draft version on whether, what that timing looks like, and if a special meeting maybe makes sense so that we can have time to look through that one more time before the noticing.
Yeah, if I'm able to find graphics on it, I'll make sure a picture comes to you.
Okay.
You can
incorporate that. Okay, well, thanks for your time and for spending your evening.
Okay, well, no, this was important. And this is one that the
I knew this was
city council
you showed up and saw a packed house.
There should be.
So let's get back to the agenda.
All right.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you
care.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any old business? No, just me. Oral and written communications. Any? And I apologize that we didn't read the letters from Wayne and all in, but we did all get them.
Okay, sure.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn to the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee on Wednesday, January 12th, 2022 at 4 p.m. in the community room, 910 Calle Negocio. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Aye.
We have one aye, two ayes, and three ayes.
Okay, great.